The champagne in Jace's glass had gone warm 20 minutes ago, but he kept holding it because it gave his hands something to do. If he put it down, he might accidentally reach for the phantom service pistol that hadn't been on his hip in 6 months. He stood near the edge of the observation deck on the Nexus, a massive neutral station orbiting the homeworld of the matriarchs. The view was expensive. Outside the meter-thick transparasteel, the local star burned a clean, clinical white, illuminating the orbital traffic of a dozen different species. Living ships with chitinous hulls drifted alongside blocky human freighters. Needles of silver light ferried diplomats back and forth from the planet below. Jace rubbed his eyes. He was 32 years old, but his knees felt 50 and his soul felt dead. A tall, spindly alien with translucent skin and 4 delicate arms glided past him. The creature paused, looking Jace up and down with large, unblinking black eyes. It was the look a human might give a tiger in a zoo, a mix of fascination and primal fear. The young barbarians. That was what they called humanity. Jace took a sip of the warm champagne and regretted it. The taste was too sweet, like rotting fruit. He tried to focus on the jazz music playing softly in the background, but his mind betrayed him. The clinking of crystal glasses sounded like shell casings hitting a metal deck. The murmur of conversation shifted into the static of a jammed comms channel. For a second, the lavish ballroom vanished. Jace was back in the pressure hull of the Icarus, 3 days after the siege of Antares. The air scrubbers had failed. The gravity was gone. He was floating in the dark, surrounded by the cooling bodies of men and women he had trained with, waiting for a rescue beacon that might never come. He could smell the ozone. He could taste the copper of his own blood. "Lieutenant Jace," the voice snapped him back. The Icarus vanished. The smell of ozone was replaced by expensive alien perfume and recycled station air. Jace blinked, forcing his heart rate to settle. Standing before him was a junior aide from the Earth Diplomatic Corps. The kid looked terrified. His suit was too new, his haircut too sharp. "It is just Jace," he said. His voice was gravel, roughened by years of shouting over engine roar and gunfire. "I am not a lieutenant anymore. I am an engineer, a civilian." "Ambassador Holloway needs to see you," the aide said. He kept his distance, as if Jace might explode. "Immediately, in the private sector." Jace looked at the warm champagne, then set the glass on a passing hover tray. "I am supposed to be the visual prop for the evening, the war hero who cleaned up nicely. If I leave, who is going to scare the dignitaries?" "Please, sir, it is urgent." Jace sighed. He adjusted the collar of his dress uniform, a stiff, uncomfortable thing that felt more like a costume than clothing. "Lead the way." They walked through the corridors of the Nexus. The station was a marvel of engineering, a hub where the elder civilizations met to trade and politic. Humanity was the new kid on the block, the species that had barely survived its own infancy and then kicked down the door to the stars with nuclear fire and desperation. They were tolerated because they were tough. They were ridiculed because they were loud. The aide led him to a heavy door made of sound-dampening alloy. He pressed his palm to the scanner, and the door slid open. Ambassador Holloway was pacing. She was a woman in her 60s who looked like she was carved from granite, but tonight she looked frazzled. Sitting across from her, perfectly still, was an alien envoy Jace recognized as a Varanth, tall, draped in flowing robes of shifting indigo, face hidden behind a ceremonial porcelain mask. "Jace," Holloway said, stopping in her tracks. "Sit down." "I prefer to stand," Jace said. He leaned against the bulkhead, crossing his arms. "What did I do? Did I frown at a duke? Use the wrong fork? This is High Minister Kalen of the Matriarchal Court, Holloway said, gesturing to the masked figure. The alien tilted its head. The porcelain mask remained fixed, a frozen expression of serenity. The hero of Antares. Your file says you held a mining perimeter against 3 waves of dread drones with nothing but a localized mag field and a welder. I had a rifle too, Jace said. Eventually. We need you to do something for us, Jace, Holloway said. Her voice was tight. Something that requires that same kind of recklessness. I am retired, Jace said. I fix hyperdrives now, and if you want someone to shoot something, call the Marines. We do not need you to shoot anything, the High Minister said. His voice was synthesized, coming from a translator unit on his collar. It sounded smooth, melodic, and utterly devoid of humanity. We need you to marry. Jace stared at them. The silence in the room stretched thin. He waited for the punchline. When none came, he let out a short, harsh laugh. Excuse me? The matriarchs have proposed a symbolic union, Holloway said, stepping forward. She looked desperate. A gesture of trust. Humanity has been on the fringes of the Galactic Council for 10 years. We are starving for trade routes. We need tech sharing. We need protection from the Outer Rim raiders. The matriarchs rule the oldest, most powerful empire in the sector. A marriage between one of their noble houses and a human representative would legitimize us. It would signal to the galaxy that we are not just barbarians. We are family. So get a diplomat to do it, Jace said, pushing off the wall. Get a volunteer. They asked for a warrior, the High Minister said. Our culture values strength, survival. You are the most decorated veteran in your fleet who is currently unmatched. Your psych profile suggests resilience. You are the chosen candidate. I did not volunteer, Jace said. And the answer is no. Jace, Holloway said. Her tone dropped, losing the diplomatic sheen. We are broke. Earth is rationing water again. The colonies are failing. If we do not get this treaty, we are looking at total economic collapse within 5 years. If we collapse, the vultures come in. We are talking about another war. A war we cannot win. Jace clenched his jaw. He looked at the ambassador, seeing the sleeplessness in her eyes. He hated politicians. He hated how they moved people around like currency. But he remembered the burning ships. He remembered the colonies begging for support that never came because Earth couldn't afford the fuel. A symbolic union, Jace repeated. What does that even mean? I sign a paper, shake a hand, and go back to fixing engines? Essentially, the High Minister said, you will participate in the rite of selection. You will choose a bride from one of the minor noble houses. She will remain on the homeworld. You will likely remain here or return to Earth. It is a political fiction, but the ceremony must be observed. And if I refuse, then the fleet leaves the sector, Holloway said bluntly. And we are on our own. Jace looked at his hands. They were scarred, rough, stained with phantom grease and real blood. He was a tool. He had always been a tool. First for the Grand Admirals, now for the diplomats. Fine, Jace spat. When do I leave? The shuttle ride down to the planet was smooth, too smooth. The matriarchal homeworld, Operia, was a jewel of bioluminescence and ancient architecture. As they descended through the atmosphere, Jace saw cities that looked like they were grown from crystal and coral rather than built. Towers spiraled up into the stratosphere, connected by ribbons of light. He was dressed in his full-dress blues, medals pinned to his chest. They felt heavy, like lead weights dragging him down. They landed on a private pad suspended thousands of feet in the air. The gravity here was slightly lower than Earth's, making Jace feel lightheaded and unmoored. Follow the protocol, Holloway whispered to him as they walked toward the massive golden doors of the palace. Bow when they bow. Speak only when spoken to. And for God's sake, do not touch anyone. I am a delight, Jace muttered. Do not worry. The doors opened, and Jace stopped breathing for a second. The great hall of the matriarchs was not a room. It was a canyon. The ceiling was lost in a haze of purple nebula gas that seemed to have been trapped indoors. Floating orbs of warm, golden light drifted like lazy fireflies, illuminating a floor made of polished obsidian. Platforms of white stone defied gravity, hovering at different heights, holding courtiers and nobles in robes that shimmered like oil on water. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. And they were all looking at him. A sound filled the air, a low, resonant humming. It came from a choir of 300 aliens standing on a balcony high above. It wasn't singing. It was a vibration that Jace could feel in his teeth. The human tribute approaches, a voice boomed. It came from a towering figure near the far end of the hall, a creature holding a staff topped with a singular, unblinking eye. Jace walked. It felt like walking the length of a firing squad line. He could hear the whispers. The translation implant in his ear picked up fragments. Look at the bone structure, so crude. Too much aggression in the walk. A savage in a uniform. He kept his face blank. He was good at that. He had practiced that face while officers screamed at him, while shrapnel pinged off his hull, while he buried his friends. At the end of the hall, a massive throne sat atop a dais of living roots. The matriarch sat there. She was ancient, her skin the color of pale moonlight, her eyes clouded with centuries of boredom. Next to her stood a male figure, the regent. He was sharper, younger, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And in front of the dais, standing in a perfect crescent line, were 12 women. They were tall. They were draped in veils of gossamer silver that hid their faces but hinted at the humanoid shapes beneath. Their gowns were woven from light-absorbing fabric that seemed to drink the room's illumination. Jace stopped at the marked circle on the floor. He felt ridiculous. He felt angry. "Welcome, warrior of Earth," the matriarch said. Her voice did not boom. It whispered, yet it carried to every corner of the vast hall. "You have come to bind your people to ours." "I have," Jace said. He remembered to bow, stiffly. "The tradition of House Ethelgard dictates that fate must guide the heart," the matriarch continued. "We do not trade daughters like cattle. We allow the universe to speak. You must choose your prospective wife by sight alone. Trust your instincts. Human. Point to the one who calls to your spirit." Jace looked at the line of veiled women. They were identical. Same height, same posture, same impenetrable veils. It was a shell game, a carnival trick. He felt a spike of irritation. They were mocking him. They knew he couldn't tell them apart. They probably had the correct choice rigged. Maybe the one in the middle or the one on the far right. If he picked the wrong one, would they laugh? Would they cancel the trade deal? He looked at Holloway, who was standing off to the side, sweating. She gave him a tiny, pleading nod. "Just pick one." Her eyes screamed. Jace looked back at the women. He was tired of this. Tired of the games, the politics, the feeling of being a dancing monkey for a room full of immortals. He closed his eyes. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. The humming of the choir faltered for a half-second. "Fate," Jace muttered to himself. "Sure. Let us see what fate thinks of this." He began to spin. It was a slow, deliberate rotation. He felt the eyes of the Empire burning into him. He felt the absurdity of it. He was a decorated combat engineer, a survivor of the hell of Antares. And here he was, playing spin the bottle in a room worth more than his entire solar system. He stopped. He didn't know where he was facing, and he kept his eyes closed. He raised his arm and extended a finger, pointing straight ahead into the darkness of his own eyelids. He opened his eyes. He was pointing at the woman on the far end of the crescent. She seemed slightly apart from the others, her posture more rigid, her hands clenched at her sides. Jace dropped his hand. He looked at the matriarch, then at the silent crowd. A dark, sarcastic smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. He decided to lean into the absurdity. "They told me to choose a wife," Jace announced, his voice echoing in the silent hall. "I pointed randomly, and she was an alien princess." He waited for the polite applause. He waited for the regent to step forward and say, "Excellent choice. That is the third cousin of the Duke of Nowhere." Instead, the hall froze. The air left the room. The choir stopped humming entirely. The silence was sudden and violent, as if an airlock had been blown. Jace's smile faltered. He looked at Holloway. The ambassador had gone the color of ash. She had her hand over her mouth. The woman he had pointed to did not move, but the air around her seemed to shimmer with heat. "The choice is made," the matriarch said. Her voice was not a whisper anymore. It was a crack of thunder. She stood up, her ancient joints popping. "The veil of mystery must fall." The woman at the end of the line reached up. Her movements were sharp, angry. She gripped the silver fabric and tore it away from her face. Jace blinked. She was stunning, but not in the way the diplomats were. She was terrifying. Her skin was a pale violet, marked with swirling bioluminescent patterns that glowed with a rhythmic, intense light. Her eyes were solid pools of gold, burning with a fury that could peel paint. On her head sat a crown of living crystal that grew directly from her temples, jagged and regal. This wasn't a minor noble. This was a predator in a silk dress. "Lyriel," the crowd gasped. The name rippled through the room like a shockwave. Princess Lyriel, the first daughter, the heir. Jace felt a cold pit open in his stomach. "Oops," he whispered. Lyriel took a step forward. She ignored the crowd. She ignored the matriarch. She stared directly at Jace. "I did not consent to this," she said. Her voice was low, melodic, and cold as liquid nitrogen. "I am not part of the lottery, Mother. I was standing here to observe the humiliation of the human, not to participate in it. The law of the blind choice is absolute," the matriarch declared. She looked shaken, her composure cracking, but she gripped her staff tight. He pointed. "You stood in the circle. Fate has chosen." "Fate is a fool," Lyriel snapped. "And so is this primitive." "Wait," Jace said, raising his hands. "Hold on. I did not know. Let me spin again. I can do a do-over. Best 2 out of 3. "Silence," the matriarch commanded. "To reject the choice now would be to declare our most sacred tradition a lie. It would be an insult to the ancestors. It would signal to the galaxy that the House of Ethelgard has no honor." The regent, the uncle with the fake smile, stepped forward. Jace watched him closely. The man's eyes were darting between Lyriel and Jace. He looked surprised. But under the surprise, there was something else. Calculation. He was doing math in his head, and he seemed to like the result. "The matriarch is wise," the regent said smoothly. "The human has chosen the highest prize. It is unexpected, yes. But perhaps it is exactly what the prophecy meant when it spoke of new blood strengthening the old." "Do not quote scripture at me, uncle," Lyriel hissed. "It is done." The matriarch slammed her staff down. The sound rang like a bell. "The engagement is sealed. Prepare the binding." "No," Jace said. He looked at Holloway. "Ambassador, get me out of here. This is way above my pay grade. Holloway stepped forward, her hands shaking. Your supremacy. Perhaps we should reconsider? This is the princess. Surely a human is not fit for... Are you rejecting our alliance, Ambassador? The regent asked softly. Are you saying Earth is too good for our heir? Holloway froze. The trap snapped shut. If she said yes, she insulted the Empire and started a war. If she said no, she condemned Jace. We accept, Holloway whispered. She wouldn't look at Jace. Good, the matriarch said. Priests. Suddenly, Jace was swarmed. Robed figures surrounded him, chanting in a language that sounded like grinding stones. A heavy cloak was thrown over his shoulders. A document was thrust into his visual field, a holographic contract that scrolled too fast to read. Sign, a priest commanded, with your biometric pulse. I am not signing that, Jace said, backing away. He bumped into a guard, a 7-foot creature in chitinous armor who didn't budge. Sign, the guard grunted. Jace looked at Lyriel. She was surrounded by her own attendants, who were adjusting her gown and placing ceremonial chains around her neck. She looked like she was being dressed for a funeral. She looked up and locked eyes with him. For a moment, the noise of the hall faded. You think this is funny? She said. Her voice didn't carry to the room, only to him. You made a joke. You pointed at random. I was trying to get it over with, Jace said, feeling a rare surge of guilt. I didn't know it was you. If you think this is a joke, Lyriel said, her golden eyes narrowing. You have no idea what you just stepped into. You have just walked into a nest of vipers, human, and you dragged me in with you. Your Highness, a priest interrupted, grabbing Jace's wrist. He forced Jace's hand onto the holographic pad. The device beeped. Authorized, the machine chirped. The crowd erupted into a mix of cheers and frantic whispering. The music swelled, loud and triumphant, drowning out Jace's protest. To the star canopy, the regent shouted. Jace was marched forward. He felt like a prisoner walking to the gallows. He was shoved up the stairs of the central dais until he stood next to Lyriel. Up close, she smelled like ozone and crushed flowers. She was taller than him by 2 inches, and she radiated a heat that he could feel through his uniform. Extend your left arm, the matriarch commanded. Jace hesitated. The guard nudged him hard in the ribs. Jace extended his arm. Lyriel extended hers. Her skin was cool to the touch, but the bioluminescence beneath it pulsed rapidly. She was terrified, he realized. She was hiding it behind a mask of rage, but her pulse was hammering. A priest brought forward a box made of floating glass. Inside sat a bracelet. No, not a bracelet. It was a loop of pure white light, writhing like a living thing. The neural bond, the matriarch intoned. 2 minds, 1 path. What one feels, the other shall know. No secrets, no lies, only unity. Wait, Jace said. Neural? You mean it links our brains? Only the limbic resonance, the regent said, smiling that oily smile. You will share emotional proximity. It ensures fidelity. I do not want inside his head, Lyriel spat, and I definitely do not want inside hers. Jace added, Bind them, the matriarch said. The priest opened the box. The loop of light shot out. It wrapped around Lyriel's wrist, then snaked across the gap and coiled around Jace's. It tightened. Jace gasped. It didn't hurt. Exactly. It felt like sticking his finger into an electrical socket, but instead of voltage, it was pure emotion, rage. It hit him like a physical blow. It wasn't his rage. It was cold, sharp, and massive. It was a scream trapped behind a wall of ice. It was Lyriel's mind crashing against his. He staggered, gripping the railing. Beside him, Lyriel flinched, her eyes widening. She was feeling him now. Exhaustion, confusion, panic. She looked at him, her lips parted in shock. She was tasting his trauma, the gray sludge of his PTSD, the bone-deep weariness he carried. "Breathe," she whispered to him, though he wasn't sure if she spoke it aloud or if he just heard the thought. "Do not pass out, human. Do not dare humiliate me further by fainting." "I am trying," Jace gritted out. He forced himself to stand straight. The bracelet pulsed, settling into a dull, throbbing hum against his skin. The light faded from blinding white to a soft, persistent blue. "Behold," the regent shouted to the crowd, raising his hands. "The union is sealed. Long live Princess Lyriel. Long live her consort." "Consort," Jace muttered. "Great." The crowd cheered. Flowers made of light rained down from the ceiling. The matriarch looked satisfied. The regent looked triumphant. Jace looked at his wife. Lyriel was staring straight ahead, her face a mask of perfect, regal indifference. But through the bracelet, Jace could feel a single, crystal-clear emotion radiating from her, sharp enough to cut glass. Dread. "They are going to kill us," Jace realized, the thought slipping out before he could stop it. Lyriel's head snapped toward him. She didn't deny it. She didn't tell him to be quiet. She just squeezed her hand into a fist, the light of the bracelet flaring between them. "Smile, Jace," she said, her voice barely audible over the roaring crowd. "Smile. If we are going to die, let us make them work for it." Jace looked at the sea of alien faces, then at the princess who hated him, then at the glowing shackle on his wrist. He forced a smile. It was a jagged, ugly thing, but it was there. "Yes, dear," he said. The music reached a crescendo, swallowing them whole. The royal wing of the palace of Ethelgard was less a living space and more a hallucinogenic dreamscape. Jace sat on the edge of a bed that was grown from living moss, staring at a window that shouldn't exist. The wall was gone. There was no glass, no plastic, no force field he could see. There was just the open vacuum of space, the stars burning cold and bright, and the curvature of the planet Operia turning slowly below. The air in the room remained perfectly pressurized, smelling faintly of ozone and crushed lilies, held in by some gravity manipulation tech that made his engineer brain itch. He picked up a boot and tossed it at the opening. It hit an invisible barrier with a dull thud and bounced back. "Still magic," Jace muttered. He leaned down to retrieve the boot. "I hate magic." He had been here for 3 weeks, 21 days of surreal luxury that felt like a prison sentence in a 5-star resort designed by insane elves. The room had floating gardens where water flowed uphill. The servants, tall beings with skin like polished obsidian, spoke only in clicks and pheromones that his universal translator converted into headache-inducing poetry. And then there was the bracelet. Jace looked down at his left wrist. The neural bond was a band of white light that looked like it was tattooed into his skin. It pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat that wasn't his own. Thump, thump, thump. It was Lyriel's heartbeat, or her emotional baseline. He wasn't sure. Most of the time it was a dull background hum of icy control. But sometimes, like right now, it spiked with a jagged edge of irritation. The door to his chambers slid open with a hiss. Lyriel swept in. She was wearing a training tunic of dark gray scale fabric that looked militaristic and severe. Her hair, usually a floating halo of light, was braided tight against her skull. "You are late," she said. Her voice was crisp. "I am hiding," Jace said. He pulled his boot on. "I am pretty sure the bathroom drone tried to drown me this morning. It kept spraying scented mist in my face until I couldn't breathe. That is the cleansing vapor, Lyriel said, tapping a data pad she held. You are supposed to inhale it. It purifies the blood. I like my blood impure, Jace said. It keeps my immune system on its toes. Lyriel sighed. A sharp spike of annoyance traveled up Jace's arm, stinging like a static shock. He rubbed his wrist. Stop doing that, he said. Stop being difficult, she countered. We have 3 hours of etiquette training before the Regent's dinner tonight. If you embarrass me in front of the High Council again, I will have you reassigned to the waste recycling decks. I did not embarrass you yesterday, Jace argued, standing up. I bowed. You bowed with your palms closed, Lyriel said, her golden eyes narrowing. In my culture, closed palms signify a desire to strangle the host. You told the Duke of Valoris that you wanted to choke him to death. To be fair, he was talking about tariff rates for 40 minutes, Jace said. The urge was there. Lyriel stared at him. For a second, the bracelet fluttered. It wasn't annoyance this time. It was something lighter, almost like a bubble popping. Amusement. She clamped down on it instantly, her face remaining a mask of stone. Come, she commanded. We are going to the gallery, and you are going to learn how to eat soup without insulting the ancestors. The gallery was a long, echoing hall filled with statues of past matriarchs. It was also where Lyriel conducted his torture sessions, which she called cultural integration. They sat at a long, floating table. In front of Jace sat a bowl of blue liquid that smoked ominously. Lift the spoon, Lyriel instructed. She was pacing behind him like a drill instructor. Jace lifted the spoon. It was made of some fragile crystal that felt like it would shatter if he squeezed it. Do not scrape the bottom, Lyriel said. The sound is considered the voice of the dead. Okay, Jace said. No scraping. He dipped the spoon in, careful not to touch the bottom. He lifted it to his lips. Stop, Lyriel barked. Jace froze, the blue soup sloshing dangerously. What now? You are inhaling, she said, sounding horrified. You are breathing in the scent of the broth before tasting it. That implies you suspect the host of poisoning you. Jace dropped the spoon. It clattered against the bowl. Lyriel, I am a human. I have to breathe. It is a biological imperative. Hold your breath while you sip, she said, demonstrating with a phantom spoon. It shows trust. It shows brain damage, Jace muttered. He pushed the bowl away. Can we take a break? I am starving. Do you have anything solid? A cracker? A piece of bread? Anything that requires chewing? Chewing is vulgar, Lyriel said. She sat down opposite him, her posture perfect. It is an animalistic grinding of bones. Civilized species consume nutrient mists and energized nectars. I am an animal, Jace said. I am a barbarian, remember? That is why you guys love me. He leaned back in the chair, crossing his arms. He watched her. She was rigid, perfect, terrifying. But the bracelet told a different story. Underneath the layer of command, he felt a swirling gray fog of exhaustion. She was tired. She was carrying the weight of an empire that wanted to eat her alive. Why are you doing this? Jace asked quietly. Doing what? Trying so hard to make me fit in. Everyone expects me to fail. The regent, the court, even your mother. They want me to be the savage clown. Why not let them have it? Lyriel looked at the statue of her grandmother behind Jace's head. Her fingers traced the edge of the table. Because, she said softly, if you are a clown, then I am the fool who married him. And I cannot afford to be a fool right now. The regent, Jace guessed. He is circling. He is not circling, Lyriel said. He has already landed. He is just waiting for me to show an exposed neck. She looked at him then, and the mask slipped. I need you to be formidable. Jace, I do not need you to be an Ethel Guardian noble. I just need you to be... not a disaster. Can you do that? Jace looked at the blue soup. He took a deep breath, held it until his lungs burned, and took a sip. It tasted like battery acid and cinnamon. He swallowed it without flinching. Tastes like victory, he rasped. Lyriel blinked. Then, the corner of her mouth twitched. A flash of warmth pulsed through the bracelet. It is an acquired taste, she said, later that afternoon. Jace escaped. He told the guards he needed to meditate, a concept they seemed to respect, and slipped away into the service corridors. He needed to walk. He needed to see something that wasn't gold or glowing. He found himself in the lower levels of the West Wing. The architecture here was older, heavier. The stone was dark and carved with scenes of ancient space battles. He turned a corner and found a heavy door ajar. Inside, the lights were dim. Holographic maps floated in the air, bathing the room in a cool blue light. Jace stepped inside. It was a war room. Standing in the center of the projections was Lyriel. She had shed her training tunic for a simple robe. She was moving her hands through the holograms, shifting fleet formations, marking supply lines, highlighting nebula clusters. She wasn't just looking at the maps. She was editing them. Jace watched from the shadows. He saw her reroute a convoy of food freighters away from a pirate-heavy sector. He saw her draft a ceasefire proposal for a border dispute on the Rim. He saw her analyze the structural weaknesses of the palace's own defense grid. She was brilliant, and she was ruthless. You left your flank exposed, Jace said. Lyriel spun around, her hand going to a hidden dagger at her waist. When she saw it was him, she didn't relax. You are not permitted here, she hissed. The sensor grid on the southern moons, Jace said, walking into the light. He pointed at the map. You have 3 destroyers patrolling a static route. Any smuggler with half a brain could time the gap and slip a dropship through in 12 minutes. Lyriel looked at the map. She looked at him. She tapped a command, simulating the scenario he described. A red line pierced her defense network. She stared at it. I missed that. You are thinking like a fleet admiral, Jace said, standing next to her. Big ships, big guns. You need to think like a rat. That is how humans survived the war. We did not beat you in a straight fight. We crawled through the vents. Lyriel looked at him with a strange expression. The High Command calls humanity reckless, undisciplined. We are, Jace said, but we are also creative. He reached into the hologram. His hand brushed hers. Zap. The bracelet flared. This time, it wasn't an emotion, it was a sensation. He felt the texture of her skin as if it were his own, cool, smooth, electric. He felt her sudden intake of breath in his own lungs. They both jerked back. Do not touch me, Lyriel said, but her voice lacked its usual bite. She was rubbing her wrist. Sorry, Jace said. Reflex. Why are you really here, Jace? She asked. She turned off the map, plunging the room into semi-darkness. Do not tell me you were meditating. I heard people talking, Jace said. In the corridors, the servants. They think this is a joke. They think you married me to tick off your father's ghost, or that you are just a spoiled princess playing with a new toy. Lyriel laughed bitterly. A toy. Is that what you think you are? I think I am a wrench, Jace said, and you are trying to use me to fix a broken engine. But I do not know what the engine is. Lyriel walked to the far wall. She pressed her hand against the stone, and a hidden panel opened, revealing a view of the city below. "My uncle, the regent," she said. "He believes that peace is a pause between wars. He wants to militarize the border again. He wants to seize the ancient terraforming tech your people found on Mars. He thinks if he can provoke Earth into striking first, he can rally the council to wipe you out." "And you?" Jace asked. "I have seen war," Lyriel said quietly. "I commanded a frigate during the Antares campaign. I watched 1,000 of my people burn in the void. I do not want glory. Jace, I want silence. I want a galaxy where children do not know the sound of orbital bombardment." Jace looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, he didn't see an alien princess. He saw a fellow veteran. He saw the same haunted look he saw in the mirror every morning. "Then we are on the same side," Jace said. Lyriel looked back at him. The bracelet hummed, a low, steady note of caution, wrapped in a thin layer of hope. "Do not get comfortable," she said. "We are still late for dinner." The regent's dinner was a battlefield where the weapons were crystal goblets and veiled insults. The dining hall was suspended in a gravity bubble near the palace spire. 50 high-ranking nobles sat at a circular table. The air smelled of roasted spices and expensive perfume. Jace sat next to Lyriel. He was wearing formal robes that itched, and he was doing his best to breathe before sipping his nutrient mist. The regent, Vorian, sat at the head of the table. He was in fine form, holding court, making the ambassadors laugh, making the generals nod. "It is truly touching," Vorian said, raising a glass of glowing nectar. The table went silent. "To see our beloved Lyriel so settled. When the matriarch suggested this union, many of us feared for her. To bind one of the high blood to a species so young, so unrefined, it is a sacrifice." He looked at Lyriel with a smile that was all teeth. "A noble sacrifice," Vorian continued, "giving up her own happiness, her own dignity, to ensure that our borders remain quiet. We should all honor her martyrdom." Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Poor Lyriel, so brave, such a tragic burden. Jace felt the heat radiating off Lyriel. Through the bracelet, he felt a spike of shame so intense it made his stomach turn. She was gripping her spoon so hard he thought it would snap. She said nothing. She couldn't say anything. To contradict the regent publicly would be a breach of protocol that could strip her of her rank. Vorian knew that. He was bullying her in front of the entire court, painting her as a victim, a passive object to be pitied. Jace put his spoon down. "With all due respect, Regent," Jace said. The silence that fell was immediate and heavy. Lyriel froze. Vorian turned his gaze to Jace, his eyes mild and dangerous. "The human speaks," Vorian said pleasantly. "How delightful. Go on. Jace, tell us of your gratitude." Jace stood up. He felt Lyriel's hand brush his thigh under the table, a warning. "Sit down." He ignored it. "I am grateful," Jace said. He looked around the table, meeting the eyes of the sneering nobles. "But you have it wrong. Lyriel is not a sacrifice, and she is not a victim." "Oh?" Vorian raised an eyebrow. "Do enlighten us." "I have been here 3 weeks," Jace said. "I have seen how this palace runs. I have seen who fixes the supply lines when they break. I have seen who navigates the treaties you people are too proud to read. You talk about her like she is a piece of furniture you sold to buy peace." Jace leaned forward, his hands on the table. "She is not a martyr," Jace said, his voice hard. "She is the only person at this table who seems to give a damn about the future of this empire." If she chose to marry a barbarian like me, it is not because she is weak. It is because she is strong enough to do what you are too scared to do. Change. He picked up his glass. To Princess Lyriel, Jace said. The only strategist in a room full of politicians. He drank. The room was dead silent. A few nobles looked scandalized. Others looked at their plates. But a few, mostly the younger officers, looked at Lyriel with something new. Respect. Vorian's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went flat and cold. How passionate. It seems the human has a poet's soul, or perhaps just too much nectar. Lyriel did not look at Jace. She kept her eyes forward, her face composed, but under the table her hand found his. She squeezed his fingers, hard. Through the bracelet, Jace didn't feel shame anymore. He felt a slow, burning thrum of pride, and something else, something terrified and grateful. That night, the gravity failed. Jace was asleep in his quarters when the world lurched. One moment he was in bed. The next, he was slamming into the ceiling. Oof! The air rushed out of his lungs. He bounced off the stone ceiling and spun into the center of the room. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the red strobing of emergency klaxons. Warning, grav plating failure. Sector 7 atmospheric venting imminent. Venting, Jace yelled. No, no venting! He flailed in the dark, grabbing a floating tapestry to anchor himself. The air was getting thin. The pressure seal on the window, the one open to space, was powered by the same grid as the gravity. If the power was out, the force field was failing. He could hear the hiss of air escaping into the void. Jace kicked off the wall, diving toward the manual override panel by the door. He smashed his fist into the cover, ripping it off. Wires sparked. Come on, you piece of junk, he growled. His fingers worked blindly, twisting the optical fibers, bypassing the safety lock. The hissing was getting louder. The cold of space was creeping into the room, frosting his breath. He found the master breaker and yanked it. Clunk. Heavy blast shields slammed down over the open window. The hissing stopped. The red light steadied, but the gravity didn't return. Jace floated in the center of the room, panting, shivering in the sudden cold. The door forced open. Lyriel floated in, a glow rod in her hand. She was wearing a night robe, her hair loose and wild. She looked frantic. Jace! You, she shouted. She kicked off the doorframe and glided toward him. She grabbed his shoulders, her eyes scanning him for injuries. Are you intact? Did the decompression get you? I am fine, Jace wheezed. Just bruised. What happened? I thought this place was fail-safe. It is, Lyriel said grimly. She looked at the override panel he had hot-wired. This was not a malfunction. The gravity generators for this wing have triple redundancies. They do not just fail. She pulled a data pad from her robe and jacked it into the wall port. Her fingers flew across the screen. The access logs are wiped, she muttered. Someone scrubbed the last 10 minutes of security footage. An inside job, Jace said, rubbing his shoulder. Your uncle? Or someone trying to please him, Lyriel said. She looked at the screen again, and her face pale. Wait. I recovered a fragment, a ghost file. She turned the screen to him. It was grainy, but it showed a figure in Royal Guard armor standing at the maintenance junction just down the hall. Moments before the failure. The figure placed a device on the panel and walked away. That is the Regent's personal guard crest, Jace said. Lyriel stared at the image. He tried to kill you. He tried to make it look like an accident. Tragic malfunction kills human consort. Then he claims Earth's tech is incompatible, dissolves the treaty and invades. She turned to Jace. She was trembling. It wasn't fear, Jace realized as the bracelet hummed. It was rage, pure molten rage. "I will kill him," she whispered. "I will walk into his chambers and I will—" "Lyriel," Jace said softly. He reached out and took her arms. In the zero gravity, the movement pulled them together. They drifted until they were inches apart, suspended in the red-lit air. She looked up at him. Her breathing was ragged. Her hair floated around them like a halo of white fire. "He could have killed you," she said, her voice cracking. "You defended me. You stood up for me, and he tried to kill you for it." "I am hard to kill," Jace said. "I am a cockroach, remember?" "You are not a cockroach," she whispered. She looked at his mouth. Jace looked at hers. The adrenaline of the near-death experience was crashing into something else. The neural bracelet began to pulse rapidly, a feedback loop of relief, desire, fear, need. It was overwhelming. Jace felt her heart hammering against his own ribs. He felt the sudden, terrifying realization that she wanted to kiss him. And he wanted it too. Not for the cameras. Not for the treaty. He drifted closer. Her hand came up, resting on his chest, right over his heart. Her fingers curled into his shirt. "Jace," she breathed. Bang, bang, bang. A heavy fist pounded on the door. "Your Highness," a guard's voice shouted. "Then we detected a power surge. Are you secured?" The spell shattered. Lyriel jerked back, pushing off Jace's chest. She spun around, composing herself in an instant, though Jace could feel the mortification radiating off her like heat. "I am secured," she shouted back, her voice imperious and steady. "The human is unharmed. Restore gravity immediately." She looked back at Jace. The walls were up again. The mask was back, but her eyes were still wide, still dark with the memory of the moment. "We cannot stay here," she said, her voice low. "If they failed tonight, they will try again. We need to leave." "Leave?" Jace asked. "Go where?" "The matriarch has been pressuring us to take the bonding pilgrimage." Lyriel said, "To the Moon of Silence. It is an ancient ritual. Just the two of us, a shuttle, and a few days of isolation." "Sounds like a great place for an ambush," Jace said. "It is," Lyriel agreed. "But if we stay here, we are sitting ducks. If we go, we are moving targets. And I am a very good pilot." She floated toward the door. "Pack your things, Jace. We leave at dawn." The launch bay was cold and sterile. The matriarch stood by the airlock, flanked by the regent. "The Moon of Silence will test you," the matriarch said, her voice echoing. "It will strip away your pretenses. Only truth survives the lunar night." "We are ready, Mother," Lyriel said. She was dressed in a flight suit that hugged her frame, looking every inch the warrior she claimed to be. "Safe journey," Vorian said. He smiled at Jace. It was the smile of a man who knows the outcome of the game. "Do be careful. The atmospheric storms are unpredictable this time of year." "We will watch the weather," Jace said dryly. They turned and walked up the ramp of the Star Skimmer. It was a beautiful ship, sleek and semi-organic, with a hull that shimmered like pearl. Inside, the cockpit was intimate. 2 seats, a console of glowing crystals, and a view of the black void. Lyriel strapped in. Her hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. The engines purred to life, a sound like a giant cat waking up. Jace sat beside her. He looked out the viewport at the regent, who was watching them go. "He knows," Jace said. "He knows we know." "Yes," Lyriel said. She punched the throttle. The ship leaped forward, pinning them to their seats. "That is why he is smiling." As the palace shrank behind them, Jace looked at the neural bracelet. It was glowing softly. He felt a wave of determination coming from Lyriel. Cold, hard, diamond-sharp determination. She wasn't a princess anymore. She was a captain, and he was her crew. "Course set for the moon," Lyriel said. "Hold on. Jace, it is going to be a rough ride." Jace watched the stars streak into lines of light. "I would not have it any other way." The star skimmer did not fly so much as it swam through the fabric of space. Jace sat in the co-pilot seat, his face pressed against the thick transparasteel of the viewport. Outside, the universe had dissolved into a kaleidoscope of shifting neon ribbons. They were inside a wormhole corridor, a subspatial tunnel that connected the matriarchal core worlds. It looked like traveling down the throat of a god made of light. "It sings," Jace whispered. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. The ship's navigational AI, a semi-organic consciousness grown from crystalline matrices, communicated entirely through harmonics. A low, resonant cello sound vibrated through the hull when the engine stabilized. A high, flute-like trill announced course corrections. Lyriel sat at the helm, her hands hovering over controls that looked more like polished stones than buttons. She watched Jace out of the corner of her eye. The cynicism that usually armored him was gone, peeled away by the sheer magnitude of the technology. He looked younger. He looked like the boy he must have been before the war turned him into a weapon. "The AI is named Aria," Lyriel said. "She is singing the coordinates to the tunnel walls to keep them from collapsing on us." "That is the most insane engineering I have ever heard of," Jace said, turning to her with a grin. "And I once saw a guy fix a warp drive with a spoon. You sing to the universe?" "We ask the universe for permission to pass," Lyriel corrected. "It is polite." She looked back at the console, hiding the ache in her chest. She used to love these trips, when she was a girl, before she became the heir, before the weight of the crown began to crush her spine. She would sit where Jace was sitting. She would hum along with the ship, pretending she was exploring the unknown, not just traveling between palaces. Now, every light in the tunnel looked like a political obligation. "It is beautiful," Jace said, his voice soft. "Earth ships just punch a hole in physics and scream until we get to the other side. This is art." "Your people are loud," Lyriel said, though there was no heat in it. "Even your engines are angry." "We are in a hurry," Jace shrugged. "Short lifespans. We have to get everywhere fast or we die of old age before we arrive." Lyriel tapped a stone on the console. The ship hummed a contented major chord. She engaged the autopilot. "We have 4 hours until we reach the ancestral moon," she said. "We should eat. The bonding ritual requires us to be nourished, though the text usually implies spiritual nourishment. I find starvation leads to poor decision-making." They moved to the small lounge in the rear of the shuttle. It was an intimate space, lined with soft velvet benches and a table that extruded from the floor. Jace sat down, still vibrating with the energy of the wormhole. Lyriel placed a tray of food between them. It was a mix of Ethelgardian delicacies and a few vacuum-sealed rations Jace had brought from the station. "Try this," Lyriel said, sliding a plate toward him. On it sat a cluster of fruits that pulsed with a slow, bioluminescent rhythm. "Is it looking at me?" Jace asked. "It is photoreactive," Lyriel explained. "It changes color based on the heat of your breath. If it turns blue, it is sweet. If it turns red, it is spicy. If it turns black, do not eat it. That means it has gone bad and will likely dissolve your stomach lining." Jace stared at the fruit. He blew on it gently. It flushed a deep, angry crimson. "Red," Jace said. "I like danger." He took a bite. His eyes widened. He coughed, slamming his hand on the table as tears streamed down his face. "Spicy," he wheezed. "That is not spicy. That is weaponized capsaicin. That is a chemical war crime." Lyriel let out a laugh, a real one, not the polite titter of the court. It was a throaty, genuine sound that surprised both of them. "I may have neglected to mention that human heat signatures are higher than ours," she said, her eyes dancing. "You likely overcharged it." Jace chugged a glass of water, wiping his eyes. "You did that on purpose. That was an assassination attempt. If I wanted to assassinate you, I would use something faster," she teased. "Like your own coffee." She pointed to the silver thermos Jace had brought. "I have read about this. A stimulant derived from roasted beans. It is considered a mild narcotic in 3 sectors. It is the fuel of democracy," Jace rasped, his voice returning. "And engineering. Try it." He poured a small cup. Lyriel picked it up delicately. She sniffed it. It smelled burnt and bitter. She took a sip. Her eyes went wide. The pupils dilated until the gold was almost gone. "Oh," she said. "Good." "My teeth are vibrating," Lyriel said rapidly. "Is the ship moving faster? I feel like the ship is moving faster, hun. Why are you talking so slowly?" "Jace, your speech patterns are incredibly inefficient." Jace laughed. "Welcome to caffeine. Give it 20 minutes. You will either conquer the galaxy or reorganize the silverware." The tension that usually hung between them, the wall of rank and species, seemed to dissolve in the sugar and the spice. They sat there for an hour, trading stories. Jace told her about growing up in the neon-choked slums of Chicago, about fixing hover cars for spare credits, about the day the recruiters came and promised him the stars if he just signed a paper. "I thought aliens were all monsters," he admitted, looking into his empty cup. "The propaganda vids showed you guys with fangs, eating babies. I was terrified the first time I saw a Varanth. And I thought humans were loud animals," Lyriel countered. She was leaning forward, her chin in her hand. "My tutors told me you were barely sentient, that you solved every problem with an explosion. I used to imagine you lived in caves and communicated by banging rocks together." "We do bang rocks together," Jace smiled. "We just call it heavy metal music." Lyriel smiled back, but it faded as she looked at him. "You are not what they said, Jace. You are tired and sad, but you are not a monster. And you are not an ice queen," Jace said softly. "You are just lonely." The neural bracelet on their wrists flared. It wasn't a spike of emotion this time. It was a warm, steady hum of understanding. It felt like a door opening. The ship's AI interrupted them with a discordant, minor key warble. Lyriel stiffened. "Arya says there is an anomaly." She hurried back to the cockpit, the caffeine jitter making her movements sharp. Jace followed. "What is it?" "A sensor ghost," Lyriel said, scanning the displays. "Something trailing us in the wake of the wormhole. It matches the signature of a stealth drone." She keyed the comms. "Escort Wing Alpha. This is Royal 1. We are detecting a shadow contact at Vector 39. Please confirm." The radio crackled. "Royal 1, this is Alpha Leader. Our scopes are clear. You are likely seeing wormhole static. It is common in this corridor." Lyriel frowned. "It does not look like static. It looks like a targeting lock." "Negative, Royal 1. You are secure. Proceed to the moon." Jace looked at the readout. His engineer's eyes saw the wave patterns. "That is not static. That is an energetic masking field. Someone is back there." "My uncle," Lyriel whispered. "Or his friends." "We should turn around," Jace said. "We cannot," Lyriel said. "You cannot reverse in a wormhole corridor. The physics would tear the ship apart. We have to exit at the moon. Then we are flying into a trap, Jace said. We are, Lyriel agreed. But at least we know it. The protocol for the pilgrimage required a trust exercise before landing. The computer insisted on it, locking out the landing sequence until the ritual was complete. This is ridiculous, Jace muttered as they stood before the small circular chamber in the center of the ship. We are being tracked by a killer drone, and the ship wants us to do couples therapy? It is an ancient safeguard, Lyriel said, though she looked equally annoyed. The sanctuary of reflection. It uses a mild psychic field to project the participants' true desires. It ensures that the couple is not marrying for malicious reasons. Well, that is going to be awkward, Jace said. Since we are marrying to stop a war, just go in, Lyriel said. Focus on something neutral, like a rock or math. They stepped inside. The door sealed. The room went dark, then dissolved into a mist of soft, pearlescent light. The psychic field hit Jace like a wave of warm water. It bypassed his logical brain and went straight to the lizard brain, the part that wanted, the part that dreamed. The mist cleared. Jace was not on a ship. He was on a balcony overlooking a green valley. It was Earth, but an Earth that had healed. The air was clean. There was a small house behind him, not a barracks, not a bunk, but a home. He heard laughter. He turned. Lyriel was there. She wasn't wearing her royal armor or her shimmering gowns. She was wearing a simple cotton shirt and trousers, her feet bare on the wood. Her crown was gone. Her hair was loose. She was laughing at something he had said, her head thrown back, her golden eyes bright and unburdened. She looked happy. And she was looking at him with a love so simple, so easy, that it broke his heart. He felt a profound sense of peace, no war, no politics, just her, and him, and quiet. The vision rippled. Lyriel gasped. She was seeing her own vision. She saw a great hall, but the throne was empty. The guards were gone. The doors were open to the streets. She was walking through a crowd of humans and aliens mixing freely. There was no fear in their eyes when they looked at her. She felt a hand in hers. She looked down. It was Jace. He was holding her hand openly, without scandal, without shame. He was her partner, her anchor. In the vision, she didn't feel the crushing weight of the empire. She felt free. She felt chosen, not by duty, but by love. The mist vanished. The lights came back up. They were standing 3 feet apart in the small room. The silence was deafening. They stared at each other, wide-eyed. The neural bracelet was burning hot, pulsing with the residual echo of what they had just seen. Jace started, his voice rough. I was thinking about a rock, I swear. Lyriel's face was flushed a deep violet. She looked shaken to her core. The machine, it extrapolates, no, it creates metaphors. That felt pretty specific for a metaphor, Jace said. We should not speak of it, Lyriel said quickly, turning toward the door. It is just a glitch, the tech is old. Lyriel, Jace said. We have to land, she said, her voice trembling. The ship is unlocked. She fled back to the cockpit. Jace stood there for a moment, his heart hammering against his ribs. He couldn't shake the image of her laughing on that balcony. It terrified him, because he realized, with a sinking feeling, that it wasn't just a random thought. It was what he wanted. He returned to the cockpit just as the music died. The cello hum of the AI cut off in a strangled screech. The lights on the console turned blood red. Jace! Lyriel screamed. Outside the viewport, space tore open. A beam of cohesive antimatter, silent and purple, lanced out of the darkness behind them. It bypassed the star skimmer and struck the lead escort ship. The escort didn't explode, it atomized. 1 second it was a cruiser, the next it was a cloud of expanding gas. "Ambush!" Jace yelled, diving into his seat. "Shields up!" Lyriel shouted, her hands flying across the stones. "Arya, evasive pattern Delta!" The ship lurched violently. The second escort ship fired blindly into the dark, but another beam caught it amidships, slicing it in half. "They are not targeting us," Jace realized, watching the tactical display. "They are taking out the witnesses." "Hold on!" Lyriel yelled. A shockwave from the destroyed escorts hit them. The wormhole destabilized. The neon ribbons of light turned into jagged tears in reality. The star skimmer was thrown sideways, tumbling out of the corridor and into normal space. The ancestral moon loomed in the window, a gray, cratered sphere surrounded by a ring of shattered debris. "We are coming in too hot," Jace shouted. "Gravity well has got us." "Engines are offline," Lyriel cried. "I have lost harmonics. She is not singing." The ship screamed as it hit the atmosphere. Flames licked across the viewport, turning the world into a blur of orange and red. The G-force slammed Jace into his chair, squeezing the air from his lungs. "Pull up," Jace roared, grabbing the manual flight stick. "Lyriel, help me with the flaps." "I am trying." They wrestled with the controls, two tiny specks of biology fighting the uncaring hand of physics. The ground rushed up at them, jagged cliffs, glowing sands, stone monoliths. "Brace!" Crunch! The world ended in noise, metal tearing, glass shattering, the terrible groan of a dying ship. Jace blacked out for a second. He woke up to the smell of smoke and the sound of his own coughing. He was upside down, the harness dug into his chest. "Lyriel?" he croaked. No answer. "Lyriel!" He punched the release on his harness and dropped to the ceiling, which was now the floor. He crawled through the wreckage of the cockpit. Sparks rained down like fireworks. Lyriel was slumped in her chair. A trickle of violet blood ran down her forehead. Jace ripped her harness open. She fell into his arms, limp. "Come on, princess," he grunted, dragging her toward the airlock. "Do not die on me. Not yet." He kicked the emergency release. The door blew outwards. He tumbled out onto the sand, pulling her with him. They rolled down a dune of crystallized silica, coming to a stop at the base of a glowing rock formation. Above them, the star skimmer lay broken, its hull split open like a cracked egg. Smoke billowed into the sapphire sky. Jace checked Lyriel's pulse. It was fast and thready. She groaned, her eyes fluttering open. "Did we?" she whispered. "Did we stick the landing?" "Solid 4 out of 10, Jace panted. The judges were unimpressed. He looked around. The moon of silence was a nightmare landscape. The sand was not sand, but crushed crystal that hummed with static charge. The cliffs glowed with veins of raw energy. Floating stone monoliths, remnants of some gravity-warping war 1,000 years ago, drifted slowly through the air like icebergs. And there were ghosts. Flickers of movement at the edge of his vision. Echoes. Soldiers in ancient armor, swinging swords of light, fading in and out of existence. Time phantoms, trapped in the residual energy of the place. "Where are the escorts?" Lyriel asked, trying to sit up. She winced, clutching her ribs. "Gone," Jace said grimly. "Vaporized. We are alone." Lyriel looked at the burning ship. "The beacon? Can we send a distress signal?" "Maybe," Jace said. "If the comms array isn't melted, I will check the wreckage once the fire dies down." "It was a precise hit," Lyriel said, her voice hardening. "They took out the guards and forced us down. They want us stranded." "Stranded is better than dead," Jace said. He helped her stand. She leaned heavily on him. The neural bracelet pulsed, a jagged spike of pain from her ribs. followed by a wave of gratitude. "We need shelter," Jace said. "The temperature is dropping, and I do not like the look of those clouds." They limped toward the wreckage. The only intact section was the rear cabin, the same place where they had laughed over coffee an hour ago. Now, it was a dark, tilted metal box. Jace scavenged what he could: a thermal blanket, a glow rod, a few ration packs. Night fell fast on the moon. The sapphire sky turned a bruised purple, then black. The temperature plummeted. Frost began to form on the crystal sand. They huddled inside the broken cabin. Jace activated the thermal blanket, draping it over both of them. It was a small square of warmth in a freezing world. They were pressed together, hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder. The neural bracelet was the brightest thing in the dark, casting a soft blue light on their faces. "My uncle," Lyriel said into the silence. Her teeth were chattering. "He needs me dead. If I die, the line of succession breaks. He can claim emergency powers." "But why the human?" Jace asked. "Why drag me into it?" "Because if you die with me," she said, "he can blame Earth. He can say your people sabotaged the ship to kidnap the heir. He gets the throne and his war." Jace tightened his arm around her shoulders to share body heat. "He is a piece of work, your uncle." "He is a pragmatist," Lyriel said bitterly. "And I played right into his hands. I thought I was being clever, bringing you here. I thought I was taking charge." "You did take charge," Jace said. "You flew a ship through an ambush and put it down in one piece. Most pilots I know would have panicked and hit a wall." He felt her shiver against him. "I am afraid." "Jace," she whispered. The admission came through the bracelet as a cold, dark wave. "I do not want to die on this rock." "We are not going to die," Jace said fiercely. He turned to face her under the blanket. In the blue light, she looked otherworldly. The swirling patterns on her skin were dim, her energy low. She looked fragile. "Why did you see that?" she asked suddenly. "In the vision. Why did you see a house with me?" Jace froze. He looked at her eyes. They were searching his face, desperate for something real. "Because I am tired of fighting." "Lyriel," Jace said honest. "I have been fighting since I was 18. And when I looked at you in that vision, it was the first time in 10 years I didn't feel like I needed to check the exits." Lyriel let out a shaky breath. "I saw freedom. I saw a life where I was just Lyriel, not the heir, not a symbol, just a woman holding a man's hand." The space between them seemed to vanish. The bracelet began to flare, not with fear, not with anger, but with a raw, magnetic pull. Desire, longing, heat. It wasn't just his emotion. It wasn't just hers. It was a feedback loop, amplifying, spiraling. Lyriel reached up. Her hand touched his cheek. Her skin was cool, but her touch burned. "We are just two people right now," she whispered. "No crown, no rank. Just Jace and Lyriel," he said. She leaned in. The kiss wasn't tentative. It was desperate. It was the collision of two people who had been lonely for a lifetime. Her lips were soft, tasting of the alien fruit and adrenaline. Jace pulled her closer, his hands finding the curve of her back through the flight suit. The cold of the moon outside ceased to exist. There was only the heat under the blanket, the frantic rhythm of their hearts, and the blinding light of the neural bond fusing them together. The darkness of the cabin swallowed them, but in the neural link, they were burning like a star. Dawn came with the sound of thrusters. Jace woke up instantly. He was still wrapped around Lyriel, his head resting on her shoulder. For a split second, he felt a profound sense of peace. Then he heard the whine of engines. "Lyriel," he hissed, shaking her awake. "Wake up." Someone is here. She sat up, eyes wide. Rescue! Jace scrambled to the torn opening of the hull. He peered out. 3 black skiffs were descending from the sky. They didn't have the royal markings of a rescue wing. They bore the crest of the regent, a serpent eating a star. And the men dropping from them were not medics. They were commandos in heavy combat armor, carrying plasma rifles. Not rescue, Jace said, sliding back down. Clean up, crew. Lyriel looked at the crest. Her face hardened. The vulnerability of the knight vanished, replaced by the steel of the princess. They are here to verify the bodies, she said coldly. How many? 12, Jace said. Heavily armed. We have a pistol with 3 shots and a broken ship. We have the advantage of terrain, Lyriel said. She grabbed a jagged shard of metal from the wreckage. And we are angry. I have an idea, Jace said. He looked at the ship's starboard maneuvering thruster, which was hanging loose from the fuselage. Do you still have the override codes for the engine core? Yes. If I rig the fuel line to the thruster and you override the safety limits, we can turn this wreck into a claymore mine. Lyriel smiled. It was a terrifying, beautiful smile. Do it. Jace went to work. His hands flew over the ruined machinery, twisting wires, bypassing regulators. You need to lure them in. I can do that, Lyriel said. She stepped out of the wreckage. She stood tall on the crystal sand, her flight suit torn, her hair wild, looking like the queen of the wasteland. The commandos spotted her. They raised their rifles. Hold! The leader shouted, his voice amplified. Target acquired. Confirming identity. I am Princess Lyriel of House Ethelgard, she shouted, her voice echoing off the cliffs. You dare approach me with weapons drawn? The leader laughed. The regent sends his regards, Highness. He was heartbroken to hear of your tragic accident. They advanced. Closer, closer. Jace, Lyriel screamed, diving behind a rock. Eat this, Jace yelled. He jammed 2 wires together. The maneuvering thruster ignited, but instead of pushing the ship, the overpressurized fuel line exploded outward. A cone of fire and shrapnel blasted from the wreckage, sweeping across the open sand like the breath of a dragon. The shockwave knocked the commandos off their feet. The sand turned to glass where the fire touched it. Go! Jace yelled. He sprinted from the ship, grabbing Lyriel's hand. They ran through the smoke, coughing, stumbling. Most of the commandos were down, screaming or motionless, but 3 were still standing. Their armor scorched. They opened fire. Plasma bolts hissed past Jace's ear. He fired his pistol blindly behind him. The skiff! Lyriel pointed. One of the black skiffs had landed near the edge of the crash site. Its pilot was scrambling out, confused by the explosion. Lyriel didn't slow down. She hit the pilot with a flying tackle, driving her metal shard into the gap of his armor. He went down. She kicked him away and jumped into the cockpit. Jace vaulted in beside her. Can you fly this? It is a standard stealth runner, Lyriel said, fingers dancing. I can make it dance. The skiff lifted off just as the remaining commandos opened fire. Bolts pinged off the hull. Lyriel slammed the throttle forward. The skiff shot away, skimming the surface of the moon, weaving between the floating monoliths. They climbed hard, punching through the thin atmosphere and back into the black. We cannot go back to the palace, Jace said, breathing hard. They will shoot us down before we get within range. And we cannot call for help, Lyriel said. They are monitoring the channels. She looked at him. Her face was smudged with soot, her lip bleeding, but she looked more alive than he had ever seen her. Where do we go? She asked. Jace looked at the nav computer. The Nexus station, the outer slums. The diplomatic corps doesn't go there. The regent's spies don't go there. It is a rat's nest. I have been there once, Lyriel said. In disguise. It smells of grease and desperation. It smells like home, Jace said. I know people there. People who hate politics and love credits. We can hide. Lyriel set the course. She looked at the neural bracelet. It was calm now, a steady rhythmic pulse connecting them. We are fugitives, she said. Traitors to the crown. We are partners, Jace corrected. And we are going to take your uncle down. Lyriel looked at the stars ahead. Yes, we are. The stealth skiff vanished into the dark, leaving the moon and the wreckage behind. They were alone in the galaxy, with nothing but a stolen ship and each other. And for the first time, that felt like enough. The stealth skiff was a shadow moving through oil. It slipped past the glistening, pristine docking spires of the upper nexus and descended into the station's underbelly, a place the diplomatic brochures pretended did not exist. Sector 9 was a mechanical gut, a tangle of atmospheric processors, unauthorized docking clamps, and habitation modules welded together like a cancerous growth on the station's hull. The air here was thick, tasting of recycled heavy metals and fried spices. Neon signs in a dozen languages flickered through the haze, advertising cheap cybernetics, unregulated stimulants, and questions asked of no one. Jace landed the skiff on a rusted platform that groaned under the weight. He killed the engines, and the silence was instantly replaced by the roar of the sector, the thrum of ventilation fans, the distant bass of music, and the shouting of hawkers. Welcome to the bottom of the barrel, Jace said, popping the canopy. Lyriel stepped out. She was unrecognizable. The shimmering royal gown was gone, replaced by a grease-stained mechanic's jumpsuit Jace had scavenged from the skiff's emergency locker. It was 3 sizes too big, rolled up at the cuffs. Over her head, she wore a heavy cowl. Most importantly, she wore a biodamper collar, a piece of illegal tech Jace had found in the glove box. It suppressed her natural bioluminescence, turning her glowing violet skin a dull, matte gray and dimming her golden eyes to a muddy hazel. She looked around, her eyes wide. To Jace, it looked like a slum. To her, it clearly looked like a hallucination. It is vibrant, Lyriel whispered, stepping over a puddle of iridescent fluid. It is dirty, Jace corrected. Keep your head down. Walk like you are tired and you do not have 2 credits to rub together. If you walk like a princess, we will be mugged in 6 seconds. I do not walk like a princess, Lyriel snapped, adjusting the oversized jumpsuit. I walk with purposeful elegance. Yeah, stop that, Jace said. Slouch, scuff your feet. They moved through the crowded market. It was a sensory assault. A 4-armed vendor was grilling skewer meat that hissed with blue flames. Drones buzzed overhead like angry hornets. A group of scavengers with cybernetic eyes watched them pass, assessing their value. Lyriel was tense. Jace could feel it through the neural bracelet hidden under his sleeve. It wasn't just fear, it was a buzzing, electric fascination. She was staring at everything, the grime, the chaos, the life that existed outside the rigid geometry of the palace. That woman, Lyriel whispered, nodding toward a merchant arguing with a customer. She just swore at him. Publicly. People do that here, Jace said. In the court, she would be executed for breaking harmony, Lyriel murmured. Here, she just got an extra 10 credits for the engine part. Fascinating. They reached a doorway nestled between a noodle shop and a salvage yard. A heavy blast shield blocked the entrance. Jace hammered on it. 3 hard knocks, a pause, 2 soft ones. A slit opened. A red ocular sensor whirred out. We are closed, a synthesized voice grated. Go away before I vent the plasma conduits. Open up, Rix, Jace said. I still owe you that bottle of Arcturian whiskey. The slit slammed shut. A moment later, the blast shield groaned and slid upward. Rix was a nightmare of biology and chrome. He had been human once, maybe 50 years ago. But the war and the trade had taken their toll. His left arm was a hydraulic claw, his right eye was a targeting cluster, and his legs were reinforced pistons. He ran the best black market tech shop in the sector. Jace, Rix rumbled, stepping back to let them in. The shop was a cave of hanging wires and disassembled droids. I heard you were dead, or married, which is basically the same thing. Funny, Jace said. We need a place to crash. Low profile, no questions. Rix's targeting eye whirred as it focused on Lyriel. He scanned her up and down. You brought a stray? Rix asked. She smells like ozone and expensive soap. You robbing spas now? She is with me, Jace said, his voice dropping a warning octave. Rix snorted. He tossed a magnetic keycard to Jace. The old storage unit in the sub-basement. It has a water cycler and a mattress. Do not break anything. And Jace? Yeah. The bounty on your head is 50,000 credits, Rix said casually, turning back to his workbench. If you were anyone else, I would sell you out before you hit the floor. Keep the door locked. The safe house was a generous term. It was a 10 by 10 steel box that smelled of stale oil and damp rust. There was a single mattress on the floor, a sanitary unit in the corner behind a flimsy curtain, and a nutrient dispenser that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the First War. Lyriel stood in the center of the room, looking at the mattress. One bed, she said. Welcome to the refugee lifestyle, Jace said, locking the heavy Durasteel door and engaging the mag seals. I will take the floor. Do not be ridiculous, Lyriel said, sitting gingerly on the edge of the mattress. The floor is metal grating. You will wake up with a grid pattern embossed on your spine. We will share. Jace looked at her. She was trying to be pragmatic, but the bracelet was humming with awkwardness and a spike of territorial anxiety. Fine, Jace said. But if you kick me, I am enacting diplomatic sanctions. He began to strip off his armor. It was ruined anyway, scorched from the crash and the fight. He was left in his undershirt and trousers. He felt exposed, not just physically, but emotionally. There were no palace guards here, no protocols, just them in a metal box. Lyriel watched him, then reached up and unclasped the biodamper collar. She let out a long breath as her skin flushed back to its natural violet hue. The bioluminescent swirls lighting up the dim room like soft neon tattoos. That thing itches, she complained, rubbing her neck. It keeps you alive, Jace said. He sat on a crate, pulling a data pad from his pack. We need intel. Can you access the palace network from here? If I have a connection, Lyriel said. But Rix's firewall is primitive. It is not primitive. It is illegal, Jace grinned. Which means it bypasses the sensors. Give it a shot. Lyriel took the pad. She closed her eyes, her fingers moving over the interface with a speed that blurred. She wasn't just typing. She was interfacing with the royal codes she had memorized since birth, weaving through encryptions that would burn out a standard military AI. Minutes ticked by. Jace watched her face. In the glow of the screen, she looked fierce. Got it, she whispered. Her eyes snapped open. The gold in her irises darkened. Oh, no. What? Jace moved to look over her shoulder. The official report, Lyriel said, her voice trembling with rage. The Star Skimmer suffered a catastrophic failure due to human sabotage. You are listed as a radical terrorist affiliated with the Terra First movement. They say you kidnapped me to hold the Empire hostage. Of course they did, Jace sighed. Predictable. It gets worse, Lyriel said. She swiped the screen. I am in the Regent's private communication logs. He is not just blaming you. He is talking to someone on Earth. Jace stiffened. Who? General Krovos. Lyriel read. Leader of the Terra First Splinter Group. The ones who want to restart the war. Jace swore softly. Krovos is a lunatic. He thinks humanity should scour the galaxy of anything with more than 2 eyes. The Regent is feeding him coordinates, Lyriel said, scrolling frantically. He is giving Krovos the bypass codes for the matriarchal border defense grid. He wants Krovos to attack. He is inviting an invasion, Jace realized, the horror setting in. He wants a human fleet to cross the border. That gives him the excuse to unleash the planetary defense array. He wipes out Earth's fleet, looks like the savior of the Empire, and seizes the throne from your mother in the state of emergency. It is a slaughter, Lyriel whispered. He is manufacturing a genocide to get a promotion. She dropped the pad on the mattress. She looked sick. We have to stop him, Jace said. I need to get a message to Ambassador Halloway. She has a secure line to Earth Command. If she knows Krovos is being played, she can ground his fleet. And I need to get the full archive, Lyriel said. These logs are fragmented. I need the original recordings of the deal. If I can broadcast those to the High Council, my uncle will be executed for treason before he can give the order to fire. Then we have a plan, Jace said. I go to the diplomatic sector. You dig for the archives. No, Lyriel said. We stick together. If they catch one of us, the other is dead anyway. We move as a unit. Jace looked at her. She was terrified. He could feel the cold knot of fear in her stomach through the bracelet, but she was standing firm. Okay, Jace said. We stick together. Night in the safe house was a strange, suspended reality. The sounds of the sector filtered in through the walls, thumping bass, distant sirens, the hiss of steam. They lay on the mattress, dressed in their scavenged clothes. There was a respectful 6 inches of space between them, but the neural bracelet bridged the gap, humming with a low, constant feedback loop of presence. Jace stared at the rusted ceiling. He was exhausted, but his brain wouldn't shut down. He kept seeing the star skimmer burning, and he kept seeing the Regent's smile. He drifted into a restless sleep. Flash. The airlock blows. The sound of vacuum is a silent scream. Bodies floating past his visor, frozen in the rictus of death. His hands are covered in blood that floats in red spheres. He is trying to hold the hull together with his bare hands, but the metal is tearing. 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 Jace! He woke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright. He was drenched in sweat. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Lyriel was sitting up beside him. Her hand was gripping his forearm. Her eyes were wide, her pupils dilated. I felt it, she whispered. Her voice was shaky. The cold. The silence. I felt like I was drowning in space. Jace pulled away, rubbing his face with shaking hands. Sorry. Nightmares. It happens. That was not a nightmare, Lyriel said softly. That was a memory. And Terry's? Jace nodded. He couldn't look at her. He felt ashamed of the fear, of the weakness. He was supposed to be the protector, the soldier. I am sorry you had to feel that, he rasped. Do not apologize, Lyriel said. She moved closer. She didn't touch him, but her presence was a warm weight against his side. It is heavy. How do you carry that every day? You just keep walking, Jace said. You do not look back. I have nightmares too, Lyriel admitted into the dark. Not of battles, of silence. I dream that I am sitting on the throne, and my mouth is sewn shut. Everyone is looking at me, waiting for an order, but I cannot speak. And because I cannot speak, they all die. Jace looked at her then. In the dim light of the instrument panels, her bioluminescence was a soft, pulsing blue. She looked incredibly young. "We are quite a pair," Jace said, a small, sad smile touching his lips. "The broken soldier and the silent queen." "We are not broken," Lyriel said firmly. "We are just dented." She lay back down, pulling the thin blanket up. "Go to sleep. Jace, I will keep the bad dreams away." Jace lay down. He focused on the steady rhythm of her heartbeat coming through the bracelet. Thump, thump, thump. It was a grounding anchor. The cold of space receded. For the first time in years, he slept without dreaming. The next day, reality kicked down the door. They had ventured out to a data broker stall 3 levels up, trying to buy a signal booster for the data pad. Jace was haggling with a Rhodian merchant when the hair on the back of his neck stood up. "Move," Jace hissed. He grabbed Lyriel's arm and yanked her into a narrow alleyway just as a plasma bolt scorched the air where her head had been a second ago. "Target identified," a mechanical voice screeched. At the end of the market row, 2 figures in heavy bounty hunter armor were pushing through the crowd. One was a massive reptilian Trandoshan. The other was a sleek chrome droid with a sniper rifle. "Go! Go!" Jace shoved Lyriel forward. They sprinted through the maze of the underbelly. The crowd screamed and scattered. Bolts of red energy chewed up the walls around them. "Up there!" Jace pointed to a maintenance ladder. They scrambled up, boots ringing on metal. The droid was fast, its optical sensors tracking them. It fired. A bolt clipped the railing near Lyriel's hand, sending hot sparks into her face. She cried out but didn't stop. They reached the catwalk level. Jace kicked a heavy crate of waste down the ladder. It crashed into the droid, sending it tumbling into the reptilian hunter below. "This way!" They ran across the swaying catwalks, jumping gaps where the metal had rusted away. They slid down a garbage chute, landing in a pile of synthetic packing foam, and scrambled back toward Rix's sector. They burst into the safe house, slamming the blast shield down and engaging the locks. Jace stood there, panting, his chest heaving. Lyriel was leaning against the wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. She was shaking. "That was close," Jace wheezed. "Too close. They are tracking the bracelet signature. They know we are here." "They shot at me," Lyriel said. Her voice was thin, brittle. "They didn't try to capture me. They shot to kill." "I told you," Jace said, pacing the small room. "The Regent wants you dead. You are a loose end." "I am the heir," Lyriel shouted suddenly, the fear snapping into anger. She stood up. "I am the blood of the matriarchs. They are common mercenaries. How dare they hunt me like an animal?" "Because you are an animal to them," Jace shouted back. "You are a payday. Wake up, princess. Your title doesn't stop plasma bolts." "Do not call me that." Lyriel stepped toward him, her eyes blazing. "Do not speak to me like I am a child. I piloted the skiff. I hacked the logs. I am holding my own." "You almost got your head blown off because you hesitated at the ladder," Jace yelled. "You froze." "I did not freeze. I slipped. If I hadn't pulled you, you would be a smear on the wall right now." Jace slammed his hand against the wall. "I cannot protect you if you do not listen to me." "I do not need you to protect me," Lyriel screamed. She shoved him. It was a solid shove. "I need you to trust me. You treat me like a mission, like a package you have to deliver." "Because you are the mission," Jace roared. "You are the only thing that matters. If you die, Earth burns. If you die, Everything I fought for is gone. So yes, I am going to treat you like a package because I cannot afford to lose you." The silence that followed was deafening. Lyriel stared at him. Her chest was heaving. The neural bracelet was flaring with a chaotic storm of anger, fear, desperation. "Is that all?" she whispered. Her voice broke. "Is that all I am? Just the key to saving your planet?" Jace looked at her. He saw the soot on her cheek. He saw the terror she was hiding behind the anger. He saw the woman who had laughed with him in the vision. The anger drained out of him, leaving him hollow. "No," Jace said softly. "That is not all you are." He stepped closer. The space in the room felt suddenly very small. "I am terrified," Jace confessed. His voice was rough. "I am terrified because for the first time in my life, I am not fighting for a flag or a paycheck. I am fighting for you. And I do not know how to do that without being scared to death that I will fail." Lyriel looked up at him. The gold in her eyes softened. The bracelet hummed, shifting from the sharp static of anger to a low, heavy thrum of need. "I hate this," she whispered. "I hate being the prize. I hate being the target. I want to be seen." She took a step closer. She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were cool. She guided his hand up. She placed his palm against her neck. Jace froze. He knew what this meant. In Ethelgardian culture, the throat was the center of vulnerability. The bioluminescent lines there were sensitive, linked directly to the nervous system. To touch a royal, there was a death sentence. To be invited to touch there was a bond deeper than marriage. "Lyriel," Jace breathed. "I can't. This is forbidden," she finished. "I know." She pressed his hand firmer against her skin. He could feel the pulse of light beneath her flesh, a rhythmic thrumming that matched the beating of her heart. "I do not want to be a princess right now," she whispered. "I just want you to know who I am." Jace's fingers trembled. He traced the line of light from her collarbone to her jaw. Her skin shivered under his touch. Through the bracelet, he felt her sensation, a rush of electric heat, a terrifying vulnerability that made his knees weak. "I see you," Jace said. He leaned in. It wasn't like the crash on where adrenaline drove them together. This was slow. This was a question asked and answered in the silence. Lyriel tilted her head back. Her eyes fluttered shut. Jace kissed her. It was soft at first, a testing of boundaries. Then Lyriel made a sound in her throat, a small, desperate noise, and pressed herself against him. Jace's arms went around her waist, pulling her flush against him. The neural bond flooded them. It wasn't just physical sensation. It was an emotional avalanche. He felt her years of loneliness, her crushing duty, and her overwhelming relief at finally being held. She felt his trauma, his roughness, and the fierce, protective tenderness he kept buried under the armor. They sank onto the mattress, a tangle of limbs and whispered names. The neon lights of the slums flickered outside, but in the dark steel box, the only light was the violet glow of her skin and the white fire of the bond that erased the lines between them. Morning arrived with the smell of cheap coffee. Jace opened his eyes. He was tangled in the sheets. Lyriel was asleep on his chest, her hair a curtain of silver across his face. He lay there for a long time, just breathing. He felt clear. The static in his head was gone. Lyriel stirred. She lifted her head, blinking sleepily. When she realized where she was, a flush of violet darkened her cheeks. "Good morning," she mumbled, pulling the sheet up slightly. "Good morning," Jace said. He reached out and brushed a stray hair from her forehead. The awkwardness hung there for a second, heavy and thick. Then Jace smiled. "You know, he said. Usually people go on a date, maybe a movie. Then they get married. We really screwed up the order of operations here. Lyriel stared at him. Then she snorted. Then she laughed, burying her face in his shoulder. We are terrible at this, she said, her voice muffled. I did not even get a dinner. I bought you that spicy fruit, Jace reminded her. That counts. Lyriel looked up, her expression turning serious. The courtly mask was gone. She looked open. Real. What do we do now, Jace? She asked. Jace's smile faded. He looked at the datapad on the floor. We finish it. We have the proof. But we cannot broadcast it from here. Rix's signal won't penetrate the palace jamming. We have to go back, Lyriel said. Yes, but we cannot just sneak in. The sensors are looking for us now. Jace sat up, swinging his legs off the bed. He ran a hand through his hair. We need to get close to the regent, close enough to access the throne room's public broadcast system. It is the only thing that overrides the jamming. He will never let us near him, Lyriel said. Unless... She trailed off. A cold look entered her eyes. The strategist was back. Unless we surrender, she said. Jace looked at her. Go on. We spin a narrative, Lyriel said, her voice sharpening. We go back. I claim that I was overwhelmed, that you used some human mind trick, or that the crash confused me. I claim that I have seen the light and I want to return to my duties. And me? Jace asked. You are the villain, Lyriel said. You dragged me away. You forced me. You admit to being a Terra First radical. You play the part the Regent wrote for you. If I do that, they will execute me, Jace said. They will put you on trial first, Lyriel said. A public show trial. To humiliate Earth, that is when we strike. I will be at the Regent's side. You will be on the podium. We will be right in the center of the broadcast grid. Jace nodded slowly. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was brilliant. The Trojan horse, Jace said. I like it, but you have to sell it. Lyriel, you have to look at me like you hate me. Can you do that? Lyriel looked at him. She touched the bracelet on her wrist. I can act, she said. But you have to promise me something. Anything. Do not die before I give the signal. An hour later, they were ready. They stood before the small console in the safe house. Jace had rigged the datapad to the skiff's transmitter. This is the insurance policy, Jace said. They recorded a video. In it, they laid out everything. The Regent's plot, the codes, the truth about the crash. They stripped away the lies. If our biosigns flatline, Jace said to the camera, this package uploads to every news feed from here to Earth. If you are seeing this, we are dead. But so is the Regent. They saved the file. Jace encrypted it with a dual-key deadman switch linked to the neural bracelet. If either of their hearts stopped, the truth would fly. Jace held out the stylus. His hand was shaking slightly. Sign it. Lyriel took the stylus. She signed her name with a flourish. Lyriel of House Ethelgard. Jace signed below her. Jace, engineer, Earth. It is done, she whispered. They gathered their things. Lyriel put the biodamper back on, dimming her light one last time. Jace checked the charge on his pistol, then tucked it into his waistband. They walked out of the safe house, leaving the safe metallic womb behind. The walk to the shuttle bay was silent. They moved through the crowds of Sector 9, invisible ghosts. When they reached the stolen skiff, Jace stopped. He turned to her. Once we get on that ship, he said, we are not partners anymore. I am the prisoner, and you are the princess. I know, Lyriel said. You have to be cold. Lyriel, if you hesitate, if you look at me with what you are feeling right now, he will know. I know, she repeated. Her voice wavered. Jace took her hand. He squeezed it hard, feeling the bones, the warmth, the pulse of life. I love you, Jace said. The words tumbled out, unscripted, terrifying. Lyriel's eyes filled with tears. She squeezed back, so hard it hurt. And you, she whispered. Point at me, Jace. When this is over, point at me on purpose. Always. They let go. The physical break was visceral, like a limb being torn off. Lyriel straightened her spine. She lifted her chin. The warmth vanished from her face, replaced by the icy mask of the air. She stepped onto the ramp, not looking back. Jace took a breath. He slumped his shoulders, adopting the posture of a defeated man. He followed her up the ramp, publicly. They were enemies, divided by blood and politics. But under the sleeve of his jacket, the neural bracelet pulsed with a steady, defiant rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. They were walking into the lion's den. But this time, the lion didn't know he was swallowing a grenade. The royal shuttle descended onto the main landing spire of the palace like a coffin being lowered into a grave. Jace sat in the prisoner transport hold, his wrists bound in magnetic cuffs that hummed with a low, numbing frequency. 2 royal guards in full ceremonial armor stood over him, their plasma pikes leveled at his chest. Across the aisle, Lyriel sat in a separate containment field, her head bowed, her violet skin pale and dim. She wore the plain clothes of the slums, but someone had thrown a heavy gray cloak over her shoulders, the color of penitence. Through the viewport, Jace could see the crowds. They were not the cheering throngs from the engagement ceremony. This was a sea of angry, shifting colors. Thousands of citizens had gathered on the floating platforms surrounding the palace, their bioluminescence flashing in jagged, discordant rhythms of red and orange. Media drones buzzed in the air like a swarm of locusts, broadcasting every second of the traitor's return to the entire empire. The official narrative had been running for 6 hours. The brave regent's forces had intercepted the rogue human terrorist and rescued the bewildered, manipulated princess. Jace looked at Lyriel. She did not look up, but on his wrist, hidden beneath the cuff, the neural bracelet pulsed a steady, iron-hard rhythm. Wait, wait, wait. The shuttle touched down with a heavy thud. The ramp hissed open. The roar of the crowd washed over them, a physical wall of sound, a mix of alien vocalizations that sounded like grinding stones and high-pitched shrieks. Move! A guard grunted, shoving the pike into Jace's spine. Jace stumbled forward, playing the part. He slouched. He let his eyes dart around nervously, mimicking the look of a trapped animal. He saw the regent waiting at the top of the dais, flanked by the High Council. Vorian looked grave, sad, and terrifyingly triumphant. They were marched up the long crystalline walkway. Holographic banners floated above them, showing distorted images of the crash site, framed to look like Jace had detonated the ship. As they reached the top, Lyriel was steered toward the regent. Vorian stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture that looked protective to the cameras but possessed the grip of a claw. The heir returns, Vorian announced, his voice amplified across the city. Shaken, but whole. He turned his gaze to Jace. The sadness in his face vanished, replaced by a cold, righteous fury. And the barbarian is in chains, where he belongs. The tribunal of judgment was held in the Hall of Echoes, a cathedral-like chamber where the walls were made of resonance crystals that amplified every word spoken. The matriarch sat on her throne, elevated high above the floor behind a shimmering privacy shield. She looked old, her light dim, her posture slumped, Jace was shoved into the center of the room. A ring of gravity projectors snapped on, pinning him to the floor. He fell to his knees, gritting his teeth. It felt like a giant hand was crushing him into the obsidian tiles. Lyriel stood on a podium to the right, next to the regent. She kept her eyes on the floor. Vorian paced the center of the chamber. He was a master of theater. "We welcome this species," Vorian began, gesturing to Jace. "We opened our arms. We offered them our most sacred trust, the blood of our matriarchs. And how did they repay us?" He brought up a holographic projection. It showed the star skimmer burning on the moon. "Sabotage," Vorian declared. "Attempted kidnapping. This human sought to drag our heir to a neutral black site, hold her for ransom, and demand access to our border codes. He conspired with radicals on his own world to shatter the peace we have built for 1,000 years." The nobles in the gallery murmured. The sound reverberated off the crystal walls, growing into a low growl of anger. "Look at him," Vorian sneered, pointing a long finger at Jace. "A soldier, a killer. We thought we could civilize them, but we were wrong. Violence is not what they do, it is what they are." Vorian turned to Lyriel. His voice softened, becoming oily and paternal. "Princess Lyriel, speak to the court. Tell them how he deceived you. Tell them how he confused your noble spirit with his primitive lies." This was the pivot point, the script they had agreed upon in the darkness of the safe house. Lyriel stepped forward. She looked small. Her hands were clasped in front of her. She looked at Jace, and for a moment, her eyes flashed with what looked like betrayal. "I was confused," Lyriel said, her voice trembling. "He told me stories. He told me that the Empire was stagnant. He used words like freedom and choice. I had never heard such things spoken with such heat." The crowd gasped. A princess, seduced by the chaotic emotions of a human. It played perfectly into their prejudices that humans were dangerously emotional, and young female heirs were too fragile to resist them. "He took advantage of my doubts," Lyriel continued, a tear tracing a glowing path down her cheek. "When the ship crashed, I was terrified. I followed him because I did not know what else to do. I am ashamed." Vorian nodded, looking vindicated. "You see? A victim of psychological warfare." He turned back to Jace. "And you, human? Do you deny it? Do you deny that you twisted the mind of our future queen to serve your own selfish ends?" Jace looked up. He let a sneer curl his lip. He channeled every ounce of frustration he had felt since arriving on this station. The stares, the insults, the feeling of being a prop. "Deny it?" Jace laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. "Why would I deny it? You people are easy." The room went deadly silent. "You sit in your floating palaces," Jace shouted, straining against the gravity field. "You talk about honor and tradition while you rot from the inside out." I did not have to twist her mind. I just showed her a way out of this gilded cage. He looked at the matriarch's shield. "I was a symbol to you," Jace roared. "A trophy husband to make you feel modern. You never wanted a partner. You wanted a pet. Well, guess what? The pet bites." The crowd erupted. Insults rained down. Savage, beast, execution. Vorian was beaming. He had won. He had the perfect villain, the perfect victim, and the perfect excuse to launch a war. "The tribunal has heard enough," Vorian declared, his voice cutting through the noise. "The guilt is absolute. The sentence is death." He looked at the guards. "Execute the traitor, and take the princess to the purification chambers. She must be cleansed of his influence before she can resume her duties." Vorian turned his back on Jace. walking toward the matriarch's throne to accept her seal of approval. Now, the pulse from the neural bracelet hit Jace's wrist like a hammer. On the podium, Lyriel's posture changed instantly. The slump vanished, her spine straightened, her head snapped up. The tears were gone, replaced by eyes of burning gold. "Stop," she said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command, spoken in a register so low and resonant it seemed to vibrate the floor. It was High Ethelgardian, the dialect of the First Queens, a language forbidden to anyone but the blood royal. Vorian froze. He turned slowly. "Lyriel, I am not finished speaking." "Uncle," she said. Her voice rang off the crystal walls. "I invoke the right of revelation." A gasp went through the hall, louder than before. The right of revelation was a nuclear option in their legal code, a demand for total transparency that hadn't been used in 500 years because it stripped away all diplomatic immunity. "You are hysterical," Vorian snapped, his composure cracking. "Guards, remove her!" "I am the heir," Lyriel shouted, "and I command the palace core. Archmind, acknowledge." The room's lighting shifted from warm gold to a stark, clinical white. A massive holographic avatar, the face of the palace AI, materialized in the center of the room, towering over the regent. "Genetic key confirmed," the AI boomed. "Princess Lyriel of House Ethelgard. The right is granted. The archives are open." "Block it," Vorian screamed at his aides. "Cut the feed." "You cannot cut the truth," Lyriel said. She raised her hand. The data package Jace had prepared, the one linked to the dead man's switch, triggered remotely. The air above the tribunal filled with screens, hundreds of them. Video of the regent meeting with General Krovos. Audio logs of the order to sabotage the gravity generator. Schematics of the ambush on the moon. The signed order to execute the princess and blame the human. And then, the centerpiece, a detailed tactical map showing the regent's plan to seize control of the Thanatos array, the ancient planet killer beneath the palace, and fire it at Earth. The silence in the hall was absolute. Every noble, every guard, every citizen watching the feed saw the regent's signature on a document ordering the genocide of 2 species. "Lies!" Vorian roared, backing away. "Fabrications, the human made them." "The timestamps are verified by the core," Lyriel said, stepping down from the podium. She walked toward him, not as a victim, but as a predator. "You tried to kill me, uncle. You tried to murder your own niece to buy a crown you are too weak to wear." The matriarch's privacy shield dropped. The old queen stood up. She was trembling, her eyes wide with horror as she looked at her brother. "Vorian," she whispered, "what have you done?" Vorian looked at the matriarch, then at the angry crowd, then at Lyriel. He realized the game was over. The political game, at least. He tapped a control on his wrist gauntlet. "Plan B," he snarled. The doors to the chamber blew open. 50 soldiers in black armor, the same commandos from the moon, stormed in. They weren't there to arrest anyone. They opened fire on the royal guards. "Kill them all," Vorian shouted. "Claim the human detonated a bomb. Leave no witnesses." Chaos erupted. Nobles screamed and dove for cover as plasma bolts tore through the ceremonial hall. The loyal guards returned fire, but they were outgunned. Jace was still pinned by the gravity field. A stray bolt hit the projector ring near his feet, shattering the crystal lens. The gravity hold flickered and died. Jace didn't hesitate. He surged upward, his muscles screaming. He was still cuffed, but he was free to move. A black-armored commando rushed him, swinging a vibro blade. Jace ducked under the swing. He didn't have a weapon, so he became one. He spun, driving his shoulder into the commando's chest plate. The impact knocked the wind out of the soldier. Jace grabbed the commando's wrist with his cuffed hands, twisted violently, and drove the soldier's own blade into the armor's weak point at the neck. The commando dropped. Jace grabbed the falling plasma rifle. "Lyriel!" Jace shouted. She was in the center of the crossfire. A commando aimed at her back. "Duck!" The thought wasn't spoken. It was a neural scream from Jace. Lyriel dropped to her knees instantly, not waiting to look. The plasma bolt singed the air where her head had been. Jace fired from across the room, taking the shooter in the helmet. She looked up, locking eyes with him. The link was wide open now, a chaotic, high-bandwidth stream of tactical data. He saw what she saw. She felt what he felt. "The matriarch!" Lyriel commanded. Jace pivoted, firing a suppression burst that forced the attackers back from the throne. Lyriel sprinted up the dais, grabbing her mother and pulling her behind the heavy obsidian throne. "Hold this position," Lyriel ordered the surviving royal guards. She moved with a fluid, terrifying grace, pointing out targets before they even emerged from the smoke. "Two on the left flank. Shield wall up." Jace reached her side. He held out his wrists. "A little help?" Lyriel touched the magnetic cuffs with her signet ring. They clicked open. Jace rubbed his wrists, grabbing a second rifle from a fallen guard. "He is running," Jace said, nodding toward the back of the chamber. Vorian was gone. A secret panel behind the dais was open. "The catacombs," Lyriel said, her face pale. "He is going to the array. If he cannot rule the Empire, he is going to burn it." "Go!" the matriarch gasped, clutching her side where a piece of shrapnel had grazed her. "Stop him, daughter. Be the queen I was too blind to be." Lyriel looked at Jace. "Ready?" "Always." They sprinted into the darkness of the secret passage. The underpalace was a labyrinth of ancient machinery. This wasn't the gleaming crystal of the city above. This was the dark, industrial gut of a weapon built by a paranoid species 10,000 years ago. The air was hot and smelled of ozone, massive pistons hammered in the dark. The gravity here was unstable, shifting randomly as the weapon powered up. They ran along a narrow catwalk suspended over a bottomless shaft of blue light. "Defense drones!" Jace yelled. 3 spherical drones dropped from the ceiling, their lasers charging. Jace slid across the metal grating, firing upward. He took out 2. The third swooped toward Lyriel. She didn't have a gun. She waited until the last second, then leaped off the catwalk, grabbing a hanging cable. The drone's laser hit the walkway where she had been. As she swung back, she kicked the drone into the spinning gears of a generator. It exploded in a shower of sparks. She landed back beside Jace, breathing hard. "Nice move," Jace said. "Royal gymnastics training," she panted. "Finally useful." They kept moving. The deeper they went, the louder the hum became. It was a sound that vibrated in the marrow of their bones, the sound of a planet killer waking up. "We have to destroy it," Jace shouted over the noise. "If we blow the coolant lines, the core will melt down. It will bury the weapon forever. If we melt the core, the feedback could crack the continental shelf," Lyriel argued. "Operia would face earthquakes for a century. We have to seize control. We can shut it down safely." "It is too risky," Jace said. "If Vorian locks us out, he fired. We cannot gamble with Earth, Lyriel. And I cannot sacrifice my world to save yours," she snapped. They reached a heavy blast door. Jace jammed a decoder unit onto the lock pad. The tumblers spun. "We are not sacrificing either," Lyriel said, her voice softening. "We are partners. We find a third way." The door hissed open. They stepped into an antechamber and stopped. A shimmering force field blocked the path ahead. Beyond it, through the distortion, they could see the entrance to the command throne. A timer on the wall counted down in alien numerals. 2 minutes to ignition. It is a biolock, Lyriel said, slamming her hand against the field. It sparked but didn't yield. He has sealed it from the inside. Only a pure genetic match can override it. It will take 10 minutes to cycle. We do not have 10 minutes, Jace said. He looked at the field generator. It was exposed on his side. I can hotwire the field to drop, but the feedback. It is going to fry the controls on this side. He looked at her. I can open it, Jace said. But someone has to hold the circuit open manually while the other goes through. The person holding the circuit stays here. Lyriel realized what he was saying. The corridor was collapsing. The weapon was charging. Whoever stayed behind would be trapped when the facility destabilized. No, she said. Lyriel, listen, Jace said, grabbing her shoulders. Vorian has the throne. He has the codes. You are the heir. You are the only one who can override him. You have to go in. I am not leaving you, she said. It is the only play, Jace insisted. I stay. I hold the door. You go in. You stop him. You save the day. You tell them. Tell them I tricked you. Tell them I forced you to come down here. You walk out the hero. You stabilize the Empire. Stop it, Lyriel shouted. She shoved him back. Stop trying to be a martyr. Stop trying to be disposable. I am a soldier, Jace yelled back. It is what I am for. Not to me, the shout echoed in the small chamber. The timer ticked down. 1 minute. Lyriel stepped close to him. She grabbed his face in her hands. Her eyes were fierce, burning with tears. You think because you are human, because you have scars, that you are worth less than me? She demanded. You think my crown makes my life more valuable? That is the lie. Jace, that is the lie Vorian uses. I am not letting you die to make my reign easier. Then we both die, Jace whispered, and Earth burns. No, Lyriel said. We do not accept the binary. We choose a different path. She pulled a small silver disc from her belt, the data drive she had used to hack the palace. The field generator is controlled by the same AI as the throne, she said fast. If I jam the drive into the interface, it creates a feedback loop. It will not just drop the field, it will shatter the emitter. It blows the door open. And the explosion? Jace asked. We stand together, Lyriel said. We shield each other. The neural bond. We can link our biofields. It might be enough to dampen the blast. Might be? Jace looked at the countdown. 40 seconds. It is better than you dying alone, she said. She leaned in. The force field hummed violently next to them, smelling of ozone and death. We do this together, she vowed, or we do not do it at all. Jace looked at her. He saw the fear, but he saw the absolute resolve. She wasn't commanding him as a queen. She was asking him as a wife. He nodded. Together. She kissed him. It wasn't soft. It was fierce, a collision of teeth and hope and desperate love. Through the neural bracelet, he felt her soul wrapping around his, a shield of pure will. Now, Jace yelled. Lyriel jammed the drive into the generator. Boom! The world turned white. The force field emitter exploded. The blast wave hit them, but they were holding on to each other. The neural bracelet flared, creating a visible bubble of white light around them, a psychic barrier fueled by their shared survival instinct. They were thrown backward, slamming into the wall, but they were alive. The force field was gone. Smoke poured from the destroyed generator. Jace coughed, pushing himself up. His ears were ringing. He reached down and pulled Lyriel to her feet. She stumbled, but she was smiling, a wild, dangerous smile. Third way, she wheezed. They turned to the open door. The weapon chamber lay before them. It was a cavern of dark crystal, vast enough to hold a city. In the center, Suspended over a well of writhing violet energy, sat the command throne. Vorian was there. He was strapped into the interface chair, cables jacked directly into his skull. His eyes were glowing with a terrifying, unnatural light. Tendrils of energy licked around him, arcing from the throne to the walls. He was merging with the machine. "You are too late," Vorian's voice boomed, amplified by the entire chamber. "Targeting locked. Earth deleted." Jace checked his rifle. It was empty. He tossed it aside. Lyriel drew the vibro blade she had taken from the commando. "He is not a regent anymore," Jace said, looking at the monster on the throne. "No," Lyriel said, tightening her grip on Jace's hand. "He is a target." They stepped onto the bridge, walking into the heart of the fire. The Thanatos array was not merely a machine, it was a cathedral built to worship the god of endings. The chamber stretched for miles beneath the palace crust, a cavernous hollow lined with black jagged crystal that hummed with a sound just on the edge of hearing, a sound that made teeth ache and vision blur. In the center, suspended over a borehole that dropped straight into the planet's molten core, was the control throne. Vorian sat there, fused with the interface, cables thick as pythons snaked from the ceiling, burying themselves into the ports at the base of his skull. His body arched in a rictus of ecstasy and pain. Below him, the weapon's energy well swirled, a vortex of violet fire that wasn't just heat, but concentrated gravity, ready to be fired through hyperspace relays to shatter the tectonic plates of Earth. "Welcome to the end of history," Vorian's voice boomed. It didn't come from his mouth, it came from the walls, amplified by the crystals. "And the beginning of mine." Jace and Lyriel stood on the narrow gantry leading to the throne. The air smelled of ozone and ancient dust. "He is targeting the galactic nodes," Lyriel shouted over the hum, scanning a holographic display on her wrist. "He is not just hitting Earth. He is targeting the trade routes, the communication hubs, the food convoys. He is going to blind the galaxy. Create the chaos," Jace said, gripping his vibroblade. "Then step in as the only one with a flashlight." "Go," Lyriel commanded. "Keep him off the synchronization protocols. I will take the AI." They broke apart. Jace sprinted toward the throne. The gantry was blocked by the last two elite commandos, their black armor reflecting the violet light of the pit. They didn't have guns anymore. The energy density in the room rendered plasma weapons unstable. They drew crackling energy pikes. Jace didn't slow down. He slid on his knees, ducking under a decapitating swing. He slashed the vibroblade across the back of the first guard's knee, severing the hydraulic tendon of the armor. The guard crumbled. Jace used the momentum to roll, coming up behind the second guard and driving the hilt of his blade into the helmet seal. Lyriel ran to the secondary console, a podium of white stone that jutted out over the abyss. She slammed her hands onto the interface. "Archmind of Thanatos!" she screamed in high Ethelgardian. "I am Lyriel, daughter of the blood, heir to the throne. I command you to cease the charging sequence." The response was a psychic hammer blow. The AI didn't speak in words. It spoke in raw emotion. Hunger, purpose, target acquired. It ignored her. It was listening to the louder voice, Vorian's. Vorian laughed from the throne. He swiveled his head, his eyes burning with white fire. "You think you can command it?" Vorian sneered. "This weapon was forged in the blood of conquerors. Lyriel. It responds to strength, to the will to dominate. You are weak. You are diluted." He flicked his hand. A tendril of energy lashed out from the throne, striking the platform near Jace. The metal buckled. Jace scrambled for footing as the floor tilted over the drop. "Look at you, human," Vorian taunted, "scrabbling in the dirt. Your whole life has been a series of accidents, hasn't it? drafted by a lottery, survived by luck, picked as a husband by a random spin of a finger. Jace pulled himself up, panting. He wiped blood from a cut on his forehead. "You are nothing," Vorian declared, his voice rising in pitch as the weapon charged. "You are a rounding error in the equation of the galaxy. You pointed at a princess by mistake, and you think that makes you a hero? It makes you a joke." Jace looked at the Regent. He looked at Lyriel, who was fighting a mental war with a god machine, her body trembling with the effort. "Yeah, it was random," Jace shouted back. He leaped over a gap in the gantry, closing the distance to the throne. I spun around. I closed my eyes. I pointed at the scary lady in the glow-in-the-dark dress. He dodged another lash of energy. "But here is the thing about luck. Vorian," Jace roared. "Sometimes you get dealt a hand you do not deserve, and the only thing that matters is how you play it." He reached the base of the throne. Vorian tried to blast him back, but Jace drove his vibroblade into the cable cluster feeding the chair. Sparks showered him. "I pointed randomly," Jace yelled, staring up at the madman. "But if I had to do it again, if I stood in that hall 1,000 times, I would point at her every single time, on purpose, with my eyes wide open." Vorian screamed in frustration as the connection flickered. "Then die with your eyes open." The Regent surged with power, the crystals in the room glowing blindingly bright. He wasn't just controlling the weapon anymore, he was merging with the core. The physical reality of the chamber began to warp. At the console, Lyriel felt the shift. The AI wasn't just hungry anymore, it was confused. It felt the conflict between the two signals, Vorian's lust for dominion and something else. "It responds to resonance," Lyriel realized. "My ancestors bound it with fear. They fed it their terror of losing power. That is the fuel." She closed her eyes. She stopped trying to command the machine like a queen. She stopped trying to be the heir. She reached out with her mind, finding the neural connection she shared with Jace. The bracelet on her wrist burned hot. She grabbed that feeling, the raw, messy, terrified love she felt for the human, the trust that had grown in a rusted safe house, the refusal to let him be disposable. She shoved that feeling into the weapon's interface. "I am not a conqueror," Lyriel whispered into the system. "I am a partner." "Error," the AI shrieked in her mind. "Input unrecognized. Where is the fear?" "No fear," Lyriel said. "Only choice." The weapon hesitated. The violet vortex below them stuttered. Vorian felt the loss of control. He howled. "What are you doing? You are ruining the sequence." "I am rewriting it," Lyriel shouted. "No!" Vorian yelled. "I am the future." He grabbed the primary failsafe lever on the throne and yanked it. He bypassed the AI entirely, forcing a direct mechanical override. The chamber began to tear itself apart. Gravity fractured. Suddenly, Jace wasn't standing on metal. He was floating. The air around them shimmered and broke into shards of light. Through the cracks in reality, Jace saw flashes, visions of what would happen if the weapon fired. He saw Earth burning, the oceans boiling away into steam. He saw Operea under martial law, citizens executed in the streets by Vorian's death squads. He saw Lyriel in chains, her eyes dead and hollow. Then the vision shifted. He saw the other path. He saw a marketplace where human children played tag with Varanth larvae. He saw himself and Lyriel sitting on a balcony, gray-haired and laughing. He saw a galaxy where the word war was spoken only in history books. "I choose that one," Jace growled. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't have a plan. He just had mass and momentum. Jace launched himself from the railing. He tackled Vorian. The impact tore the Regent from the interface cables. There was a sickening wet sound as the ports ripped free from Vorian's skull. The two of them tumbled off the throne, locked together. falling toward the swirling energy well below. "No!" Lyriel screamed. She abandoned the console. She didn't think. She didn't calculate. She dove off the platform. They were falling into the violet abyss. Vorian was clawing at Jace's face, screaming incoherently, his mind already shattering from the disconnection. Lyriel reached for her belt. She uncoiled a grappler lash, a thin whip of monofilament wire used by the royal beast tamers. She snapped her wrist. The lash hissed through the air. It wrapped around Jace's ankle. Lyriel hit the end of the line. She slammed the anchor spike into the underside of the gantry as she fell past it. The jolt nearly dislocated her shoulder. She swung there, suspended over the pit, holding the weight of 2 men. "Let go!" Vorian shrieked, kicking at Jace. Jace looked down at the madman. He looked up at Lyriel, straining against the wire. "Your choice, Vorian," Jace gasped. He let go of the regent's robes. Vorian fell. He tumbled backward into the violet eye of the weapon. There was no splash. As he hit the energy stream, he simply unraveled. His body, his armor, his ambition, all of it dissolved into pure light. Jace swung wildly at the end of the lash. "Pull him up!" Lyriel screamed at herself. "Pull!" She activated the winch mechanism in the handle, slowly, agonizingly. Jace was hauled up. He grabbed the edge of the gantry and scrambled over, collapsing on the deck. Lyriel pulled herself up beside him. They lay there for a second, gasping, their limbs entangled, but the room was still shaking. "The cascade," Lyriel wheezed, looking at the throne. "He forced the override. It is still firing. It is building to critical mass." She scrambled back to the console. The readings were red. The weapon was confused, leaderless, and destabilizing. "I can stabilize it," Lyriel said, her hands flying over the stones. "I can take command now that he is gone. I can keep it in standby mode." Jace looked at her. "Lyriel?" "It is the ultimate deterrent," she said, her voice frantic. "If I hold this, no one will ever threaten us again. Not the Council, not the rebels. We would be safe." Jace stood up. He walked over to her. He didn't touch the console. He touched her hand. "That is Vorian's logic," Jace said softly. "Safety through a gun to the head." Lyriel froze. She looked at the power readout. She looked at the weapon that had defined her family's reign for 3,000 years. The matriarchs ruled because they held the switch. If she turned it off, she was just a person. The Empire would be vulnerable. She would be vulnerable. She looked at Jace. He wasn't afraid. He was trusting her. "If we build a peace on this," Lyriel whispered. "It is not peace. It is a hostage situation." "Yeah," Jace said. "It is." Lyriel took a deep breath. She looked at the AI interface. "Thanatos," she commanded. "Authorization Lyriel Omega-1." "Command?" the AI queried. "Dissolve," she said. "Execute Protocol 0. Dismantle the core. Warning, this will destroy the array. Irreversible." "I know," Lyriel said. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steady. "We do not need you anymore." She slammed her palm onto the confirm stud. The room groaned. The violet vortex slowed. The humming pitch dropped, lower and lower until it became a subsonic rumble. The dark crystals lining the walls began to dim, their inner light fading to gray. The power of the matriarchs flickered and went out. Above them, the palace shook violently as the energy foundation collapsed, settling onto solid bedrock. Dust rained down. Then, silence. Jace looked around the darkening cavern. "Well," he said, "that is going to void the warranty." Lyriel slumped against him, burying her face in his chest. She was sobbing, great heaving breaths of relief and grief. She had just burned her inheritance to save the world. "It is done," she whispered. "We are free." The aftermath was not a tidy ending. It was a messy, glorious beginning. The matriarch, having survived the firefight in the throne room, stood before the shattered remains of the High Council. She looked at her daughter, then at the dead screens where the weapon's status used to be displayed. "You have broken the shield of our people," the matriarch said. She looked older than her years, stripped of her invincibility. "I broke the cage, Mother," Lyriel replied, standing tall beside Jace. She didn't bow. "We do not need a shield if we stop making enemies." The matriarch looked at Jace. She looked at the hand he kept firmly on Lyriel's shoulder. She sighed, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "Perhaps," the matriarch said, "perhaps the time of the strong hand is over. I am tired. Lyriel, the throne is heavy." 2 weeks later, the matriarch abdicated. She did not name a new queen. She established the Consensus Council, a governing body comprised of nobles, commoner representatives, and for the first time, ambassadors from the allied worlds. Lyriel was asked to lead it. She accepted, not as a sovereign, but as the first speaker. The political fallout was chaotic. Some hardline sectors threatened to secede, furious that the great weapon was gone. But when the recordings of Vorian's treason played on every screen in the Empire, showing how close they had all come to annihilation, the rebellion withered. The people didn't want a strong man anymore. They wanted to live. Earth, stunned by the revelation of the plot and the narrowly averted genocide, sent a new delegation. This time, they didn't send warships. They sent engineers, doctors, and artists. The ceremony was held in the Great Hall, the same place where Jace had spun around and pointed his finger months ago. The room was packed. Humans in dress uniforms stood shoulder to shoulder with Varanth elders and Ethelgardian nobles. The tension was still there. Centuries of prejudice didn't vanish overnight. But it was a curious tension, not a hostile one. Lyriel stood at the podium. She wore a gown of simple white silk, unadorned by crystals or armor. Her bioluminescence glowed with a soft, steady warmth. "We were taught that fate is written in the stars." Lyriel spoke to the galaxy. "We were taught that choice is an illusion, that we must follow the lines drawn by our ancestors." She looked at Jace, who was standing in the front row. He looked uncomfortable in his new, tailored suit, tugging at his collar. "But fate is lazy," Lyriel said, a smile touching her lips. The crowd chuckled. "Fate gave me a husband by accident. It gave me a barbarian who did not know which fork to use." Jace grinned, his face turning slightly pink. "But that accident," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "saved us. Because when the darkness came, we did not rely on tradition. We relied on each other. We learned that the strongest bond is not the one forced upon you, but the one you forge yourself." She stepped down from the podium and walked toward him. The crowd parted. "Jace of Earth," she said, stopping before him. "The last time we stood here, you chose me with your eyes closed." "I did," Jace said. "Big mistake. Terrible vetting process." "I would like to correct the record," Lyriel said. She reached out and took his hands. Lyriel, choose you, with my eyes open, with my heart open, not as a princess to a consort, but as a woman to a man. Will you stand with me?" Jace squeezed her hands. "I am not going anywhere, Lyriel, unless you try to feed me that spicy fruit again." The crowd erupted. It wasn't the polite applause of the court, it was a roar of genuine approval, a mix of human cheers and alien harmonies. Later, in the private reception, The New Earth ambassador approached Jace. "You are a hero, son," the ambassador said, beaming. "The council wants to give you a title. Duke of the Outer Rim, Grand Admiral, name it." Jace shook his head, sipping a glass of champagne that actually tasted cold this time. "No titles," Jace said. "I do not want to be a duke. I want to be an engineer." "An engineer?" "I want to build," Jace said. "I want full trade rights for human colonies. I want protection for mixed species families who are already starting to pop up in the slums, and I want to build a real embassy, not a fortress, a place with open doors, where people can actually meet, a cultural exchange center." "That is ambitious," the ambassador said. "And a coffee shop," Jace added. "A real one, with imported beans. That is non-negotiable." 3 months later, the first annual Interstellar Cultural Festival was in full swing on the Nexus station. It was a beautiful disaster. Jace and Lyriel walked through the crowded promenade. Banners of every color hung from the ceiling. Music clashed in the air. Human jazz fighting with Ethelgardian choral hums. They stopped at a food stall. "I am telling you," Jace said, pointing at the holographic menu, "you cannot serve fermented rock moss next to hot dogs. It is a health code violation and a culinary crime." "It is a delicacy," Lyriel argued, linking her arm through his. "And your hot dogs are made of mystery meat and nitrates. The moss is at least organic. The moss glows. Lyriel, food shouldn't glow." "You glow," she teased, poking his side. "Only when I am around you," Jace shot back. They walked on, bickering happily. They passed a group of children, human and alien, running through a fountain. A human girl was trying to teach a 4-armed Varanth boy how to play tag. They were laughing. Jace stopped. He watched them, the tightness in his chest, the phantom weight of the armor he had worn for so long. Finally let go. "We did that," he said softly. Lyriel leaned her head on his shoulder. "We started it. They will finish it." They slipped away from the crowds, taking a private lift up to the highest spire of the station. It was a quiet balcony overlooking the skylanes. The traffic below was a river of light, ships coming and going from 100 worlds. Lyriel leaned against the railing, the wind catching her silver hair. Her biomarkings were dim and content. "Are you happy?" she asked. Jace stood beside her. He looked at his reflection in the glass. He didn't look like a soldier anymore. He looked like a man who had slept through the night. "I am worried," Jace admitted. "I worry that I will never really fit in. I am still the guy who pointed randomly. I am still the barbarian at the dinner party. Half your court still thinks I am going to eat the napkins." "And I worry," Lyriel said, looking at the stars. "I worry that I will always be torn. Part of me misses the silence of the palace. Part of me is terrified of this messy, loud, chaotic world we have invited in." She turned to him. "But that is the deal, isn't it?" she said. "It is supposed to be messy. Peace isn't a statue, Jace. It is a garden. It has weeds. It has dirt. And spicy fruit," Jace added. "Exactly." Jace turned to face her. He took her hand, his thumb tracing the glowing line of her pulse at her wrist. "I love you," he said. "And not just because you saved my life, or because you are a princess. I love you because you are the only person who knows how scared I am, and you do not care." Lyriel smiled. It was the smile from the vision. Open, unburdened, free. "And I love you," she said, "because you are the only person who ever looked at me and didn't see a crown." Jace chuckled, shaking his head. "You know," he said, "that day in the hall, it was the stupidest thing I ever did. I was just trying to be a jerk. I was trying to get fired. I know, Lyriel said. But standing here now. Jace looked at her, at the woman who had walked through fire with him. The woman who had dismantled a doomsday device to hold his hand. It is the only thing in my life I am absolutely sure of. Lyriel stepped closer, closing the gap between them. She reached up and adjusted his lapel, her golden eyes dancing with mischief. Well, she whispered, leaning in until their foreheads touched. The next time someone tells you to choose a wife, Jace. Yeah? You better point at me on purpose. Jace smiled and he kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted of coffee and starlight, of shared trauma and hard-won hope. Count on it, he murmured against her lips. They turned back to the view, hand in hand. Below them, the galaxy spun on, noisy, complicated, and alive. They stepped forward together, no longer props in someone else's play, but the authors of their own story. And for the first time in history, the future looked bright enough to blind them.